Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 12th, 2023 Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal from any case due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the beginning of the presentation. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, virtual attendees will use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found on the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. Proper channels for communications are sending an email to the landmarks@clevelandohio.gov email address with a comment or a letter, calling and or leaving a message at 216-664-2532, sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall located at 601 Lakeside Avenue, Suite 519. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the stated deadline are collected by Landmark staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting.
All right, just to go over the meeting rules and procedures of the Cleveland Landmarks Commission, the chair will call each agenda item, and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize design review committee recommendations and any public comments received. The deadline for public comments is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to commission members prior to the meeting. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
We'd like to call the October 12th, 2023 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Dreyer?
Here.
Mr. Edmond?
Here.
Councilmember Gray? Director Wong? Mr. Sandberry? Mr. Strickland?
Here.
Mr. Trasick? Dr. Williams? And Ms. Trott?
Here.
I'm here.
Oh, is that Dr. Williams?
Yes, it is. I'm in the building.
Okay.
I'll be right
All
there.
right. Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, we have quorum. I'd also like to point out, in addition to the commission members, we have Kevin Roberts, our representative from law, as well as Jessica Beam and myself from Landmark staff.
Excellent. Then we will begin with our certificates of report.
Yes. Yeah, we have the folks from Shaker Square here to give a report on their kind of improvements and what they have coming down the pipe.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Should we start?
You can start.
Okay. I'm Terry Hamilton Brown. I'm an owner's rep for the new owners of Shaker Square. And I'm joined by Josh Herman, who is our construction manager. And I thought I'd like to start by just giving a brief overview of Shaker Square, and not assuming everybody is familiar with it. Shaker Square is one of the first examples of transit-oriented design. It began construction in 1927 by the Van Swearingen brothers as they were beginning to develop Shaker Heights. Today, it's a shopping center in need of a lot of TLC, and that's what we're here to talk to you about. I'll give you a project and capital improvement overview of our work. The center is in the Buckeye community. Actually, Councilwoman Gray, who's a member of your commission, is our council person. And it really serves the neighborhoods of Larchmere, Ludlow, Woodhill, Fair Hill, and Buckeye. And really, I would also say is the gateway to the southeast side, serving Mount Pleasant and Point South. So we have about 168,000 square feet of commercial space. It's both retail, office, parking. And one of the really special things, obviously the architecture, the designs, but we are, I would dare say, special in that aside from transportation, you have a cinema, a grocery store, a pharmacy, 2 banks. What neighborhoods have those amenities? Next slide. So saying that, what we have been working on, and the we here are the new owners, led by Cleveland Neighborhood Progress and Burton Bell Carr, was the effort to retain, preserve Shaker Square. It was in foreclosure. We were concerned about out-of-state developers purchasing it. It already had suffered from severe deferred maintenance. So in 2022, with the assistance of the city, starting with Mayor Frank Jackson and then Mayor Justin Bibb, and Council President Blaine Griffin, who actually shares a little bit of governance here related to where Ward 6 and Ward 4 meet, were instrumental in providing monies to the nonprofits to acquire the property. In addition, we were able to pull together resources for capital improvements. And so we have in August of this year, celebrated 1 year of ownership, and in the spring of this year, started our capital improvement project. So just to put the project in a scope, we are not proposing a renovation project or a major rehab. We call this a stabilization, and it was a 3-phase project. The first was to acquire it and to have it in responsible, locally controlled and governed hands. The second phase is to stabilize it, and you'll know what I mean in 1 second, but to deal with the most pressing and urgent needs. And then beginning in really the beginning of next year, our nonprofit partner, Burton Bell Carr, will lead a visioning exercise that will lead to a vision for the square and a plan for long-term ownership. The nonprofits own it now, but we envision at some point a very large, very impactful renovation project that can reposition the square for life for another 100 years. Next slide. So this is why it needs a lot of help. The roofs have been leaking. They don't anymore, but there was, to have that much area and almost a roof problem in every quadrant was really amazing. And then this is a view of Dave's on the south quadrant, and sort of hard to see, but the woodwork is 100 years old. And so it needs to be addressed. And so for the capital improvements, knowing it's stabilization and we have limited funds, we focus and are currently finishing roofs, carpentry, lighting for safety and security, and curb appeal. Because while we're sort of flying the plane and fixing the plane, we need customers to be on the plane. So we're doing this both for the building, the community, and our tenants. Next slide. So I will describe that not only were we able to get money to acquire it, we were able to get $5.3 million to address the work that Josh will begin to talk to you about. And I want to say that we're very grateful for our local lenders, starting with Village Capital Corporation, Cleveland Development Advisors, and the foundations, Cleveland Foundation, Gunn Foundation, and St. Luke's Foundation. And this slide shows the full range of work that we are committed to doing this year and early into next year. In addition to what I talked about as key areas, there's electrical, HVAC, plumbing, concrete, and I think the parking lots and others, Josh will talk about. Next slide. And Josh, take it away.
Thank you. I'm Josh Herman. I'm with Ben Medici. I'm the construction manager that the ownership has hired to help them do this deferred maintenance. So as Terry mentioned, sort of our direct role was we have a limited amount of funds, and we could have spent the $5 million plus another $5 million to actually bring everything back up to where it really should be. So our job has been to sort of bite off pieces and figure out what those costs are. And then as we sort of whittle down the budget, we then make decisions on what we need to do based upon the biggest impact. So the two largest single scopes of work that we've had to do is the replacement and overlay of all of the flat roofs on the square. We are not touching any of the slate. We're just doing flat roofs, and we are replacing a majority of the HVAC units. There's about 150-ish units. We're replacing about half of them, basically based upon useful life. Anything that has a useful life of about 2 years or less, we're replacing those. So the roofing, we actually found a very good contractor that came on board. We had about 4 crews working on the roof, and the roofing should be done by the end of this month on the entire site. HVAC has been ordered, and I believe we're starting their unit replacement in the next week or two, and that'll be kind of going throughout over the next year as we get units, because they're sort of long lead times. Besides those two things, we've milled and paved both of the parking lots at the CVS and behind Dave's, restriped, basically bringing it back up to a nice sort of finish, because before it was very rough. On top of that, we basically did a lighting study with the goal of sort of increasing the amount of light there from both the safety perspective and just sort of an enjoyment perspective. In both parking lots, the lighting is almost done, up to about 95% complete. We've doubled the amount of lumens in both parking lots. It is much brighter. And then on the square, we have effectively replaced all of the existing light fixtures in some shape or form. You'll notice there was 3 uplights that are supposed to be shining on all the trees. None of them have worked since I've been there. Those have all been replaced. We have these light pole heads, as you can see in the top left corner. We went through a bunch of different variations on how to sort of repair or fix or increase the amount of light being produced. Because those are the original light fixtures, we decided that we were just going to re-lamp with LEDs. And it turns out that what we thought was yellow glass is actually not glass, it's plastic. Very old yellow plastic. So we've taken those out, and I believe this week we've now replaced them with new etched glass to mimic the old historic look they were supposed to be. So that should be up and running. In addition, there are a whole bunch of fixed light fixtures that are on the square facades. You can kind of see one of them down in the bottom left corner. They are in not great shape. We've taken them all down. We've sandblasted them. That's the middle picture. That is what they look like after sandblasting. So we have these copper fixtures in one and steel and copper in the other. They have not been in great shape, so we've actually are partnering with or working with Rose Iron Works to repair and remake where necessary. So it's light touch, but once again, mimicking what was there. Once that is done, we're now going to be sending out to get painted, and then we'll relamp all those with LED light fixtures and remount everything. So once again, our goal is to basically repair what was there, not try to replace, not try to upgrade, just try to maintain the existing appeal. On the facade perspective, as Terry mentioned, a lot of the wood at the square is in very rough shape.
I should be.
Yeah, sorry. There we go. There we go. All right, we're good. All right. A lot of the wood has rotted on the square, primarily because gutters have not been maintained, downspouts, etc. So a lot of rot. And so what we've done, and we've used Dave's storefront as the test, is we've taken off the old pieces of, in this case, the fluted wood. We've sent it out, and they have been recreated in solid wood. Once again, our goal is going to last another 70 years or so. So everywhere we can, taking samples, send it off to a mill worker to recreate and replace. We've also found the original drawings through city archives from 28, and we were able to confirm. So over time, because of the rotted wood, people have done chopped off the bottom 2 feet of the fluted things and done some patch repair work. And so we couldn't really tell what exactly was the original, but we found the original set of documents at city archives, and it turns out there is one existing column that is original, so we were able to match that, and we knew what what was supposed to be. So we're putting everything back kind of where it was, versus the sort of patch and cut and patch repair. So throughout the course of this year, and then probably into spring of next year, we are going around and replacing all the rotted wood panels, fluted columns, the gingerbread on the top underneath the gutters, and so forth and so on, with solid wood painted to match the original white color, and sort of just touching, pointing on everything where we can. Unfortunately, we do not have enough money to replace all the storefronts, so we are touching the places that are in the worst shape and working our way backwards from there. We talked about the roofing and the asphalt. Like I said, lighting has, we've doubled the lumens in all areas of the space. Once again, just making it brighter, safer, and nicer. Oh, and then you want to talk about the awnings? You want me to? Okay. Part of the awnings, all the awnings are in very rough shape. I believe you've worked with
Tim Barrett.
Tim Barrett.
In the storefront program
So,
is helping us study the awnings and will help us with recommendations on colors.
yep. So the idea is that we're going to take down all the existing awnings, which are patchwork of different colors, different designs, different styles, and we're going to then sort of streamline it. I'm not really going. We have the decision yet if we're doing by quad or all over, but it's going to be something. I believe those are the colors that Tim sort of gave us to work with. Yeah.
Narrowed it to that, and we're discussing if it will be even more narrow, but we'll come back and talk with the staff about that. What's the other point? All the awnings have to come down to complete the woodwork,
Right.
so we'll put in fresh awnings in the spring.
Yep, so this actually, in the next week, we'll be taking down the awnings in preparation for some wood repair while the weather still holds. The lead times for the awnings are about 4 months, so we're hoping is that next spring, the wood will be painted and repaired, and we'll be able to put it back up, hopefully by late spring, early summer. I think.
Yeah, and so we're ending our presentation to say that while we're doing this work, we really are working to reactivate Shaker Square. So last winter, we had holiday lighting, and we're committed to doing that again, working on it currently. And this summer, we launched a series called Summer on the Square. And for 1 month, for June, 1 month, one Saturday in June, July, and August, we had family activities aligning with the market, and it was phenomenal. And so we'll continue to report to the community, engage the community, and we think, make Shaker Square the community asset that it was always designed to be. So that's our update. We're available for any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Nope. Okay, so we will open up the floor to the commission for any questions or comments. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend this new ownership group for the level of coordination and collaboration that they've been able to develop. And we know that it's always a struggle to stretch the available resources and try to provide as much stabilization and improvements as possible. And I think they've developed a extremely comprehensive and well thought out plan. And we're all looking forward to a new generation of Shaker Square that we can all enjoy for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to also thank Ms. Hamilton Brown and Mr. Herman, is it? Just for your care and your eye for detail. This is such a critical anchor on the southeast side, which has been a part of many people's lives. Personally, this was the first neighborhood I lived in when I moved to Cleveland 16 years ago, and my family continues to go to Shaker Square like weekly. This is for my daughter in the picture, but I just think that it is it's a charming place. It's a historic place. It's one of the first of its kind, I think, in America, especially with the rail coming through. It is part of our transit-oriented development, a naturally occurring transit-oriented development, I should say. And so it's such a precious anchor that needs this level of care. And so we're very thankful for all that you're doing here.
Thank you.
Mr. Dryer?
Yeah, I live just off Shaker Square now, and just the lighting has been sort of this immediate improvement. I mean, it used to be you could drive through down Shaker and it was this big dark spot, and it's really made a big improvement. So that's just that one. It's not a little thing, but that one little thing has made that incredible asset better. I was wondering about the slate roofs, because I feel like the slate is really a signature part of the building, and I just wondered if you what your plan is for that, or if you figured that out yet.
So the slate's useful life, this particular slate's like 1.5 inches thick. It's like 200 years of its useful life. We got some proposals to what it would take to repair, or basically take all the slate off and repair the underneath. It's like $5 million for us to just do the slate, not the flat roofs, just the slate roof. So obviously, financially, we could not do it. So what our plan is we are dealing with the gutters and the gutter repair. So we are taking out the lower level of the slate and repairing the gutters that are in very bad shape, replacing with the old copper style, putting it back the way it was. But that is the limits of what we can do from a slate perspective. We have an ongoing maintenance plan that as things and areas go bad and we have leaks, we will deal with it from an operational maintenance perspective. But there is no overarching sort of repair plan at the moment for the slate. It's just right now it's just too costly.
And not needed.
And not needed. So right now, knock on wood,
Problem with
the flat roofs we took care of. We have not heard anything about any slate areas that are bad. Obviously, maybe next spring when we get the really heavy storms, we'll hear about it and we'll deal with it. But as of right now, we're okay.
Well, great. I mean, I know it's expensive, and so that's always an issue. I really am encouraged, as Director Wong said, how you really look. I mean, you like with the lighting, you're really doing it right, and that makes a big difference. The only other thing I want to mention is this is sort of connected to the awnings, and it's sort of not. And you may have been dealing with this. There's, in front of Edwin's is a big tent that's been there probably since the pandemic. And so I'm hoping that somehow you can figure out how to support Edwin's and somehow make that tent look a little better. Thanks.
Oh, that would be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dryer. I will just echo much of what my fellow commission members have said. This is a wonderful project, and and I commend you for how you prioritize things. It's easy to focus your money on the curb appeal to try to bring people in. It's hard to focus on the things that actually do affect people's quality of life, but they don't see, like roofs and HVAC units. So I appreciate how you've tried to balance it and prioritize and affect people's quality of life in all areas, from your mechanical to your roofing to your lighting. So, and obviously the woodwork and so forth is needed also. But I appreciate that you actually focused on the things that are the hard things to focus on, because they're not appreciated by the layman as much, but until they affect them personally. So I think it's a great project, and I appreciate your care.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission?
Madam Chair, don't mean to prolong the meeting, but I do want to echo everything that's been said so far. I live on Larchmere. I'm always at Shaker Square. I shop at Dave's. But I saw the activity on that corner, especially around August, September, just before the start of the Greater Cleveland Urban Film Festival.
Yeah.
And so, oh my goodness, they're replacing the street. They're replacing all the woodwork. I hope they finish before September 18th, which was sort of the kickoff. But, well, no, I think it was the week before, September 11th. It actually started, and things were finished. And it's a walking community, as you know, and so people had access, to the theater, to the grocery store, to the bus stop, right there in the corner, right at Dave's. And so it's a great community. And again, it's not just the facade that's being improved. I think the quality of life is actually being improved as well to benefit an intergenerational group of visitors to the square. So thank you for that.
Thank you for your.
But again, it's my neighborhood, I'm biased.
Thank you for the opportunity to give you an update. We appreciate it.
We appreciate the update. Thank you. Have a great day. That concludes our report portion of our agenda. We'll move on to certificates of appropriateness. We'll begin with our first case located at 1220 West 9th Street, Land of Plenty Main Avenue mural on the Archer. I would like to welcome the applicant. You can unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Ian Meadows, representing downtown Cleveland, and I'm here along with our wonderful artist, Debbie Clapper, to present this exciting new installation. Just a quick little overview. This project is a project of downtown Cleveland, and we're excited to add this new public art installation in the warehouse district along Main Avenue, which is technically on the side of the Archer Apartments. So that being said, I will turn it over to Debbie to walk you through the piece and explain the project a little bit more.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ian, for the intro, and thank you, Landmarks Commission, for having us today. We are excited to share our concept with you. We appreciate you putting us on your agenda. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Debbie Clapper, also known as Neural. That's the moniker I use when I create public art, murals, and do client work. I create abstract geometric art for all sorts of surfaces and situations. And we are working on this mural called Land of Plenty. Now, may I ask, do we have the presentation loaded in here? I have it on my computer. I can share it. Perfect. Okay, so we can go to slide 2, please. So the mural that we're going to be presenting today, you'll see it in a few slides. We're going for a playful, a unique, vibrant, urban, joyful, seamless, where we want it kind of flowing with all the other murals and murals to come that will go on this wall. And we want it to be thoughtful. My work is, it looks like it could be computer generated in perfect lines, but part of my shtick is that I paint everything freehand. So it has a human quality to it. I don't use rulers. I don't measure, no compasses. When I draw or paint, I go for it. And as the work comes to life and as people get to walk by and see it in action, it just adds an element of magic and fun, just even during an install. So this concept is going to take some of my signature asymmetrical optical illusion organic or geometry and merge it with some fun organic swirly lines. And it's my eclectic take on the idea of the core to the shore. Next slide, please. Currently, there are a few murals on this wall. We have Alan Giberson. He's done the beautiful lettering. We have Monster Steve and Alex Tang. Those are some fun kind of graffiti-inspired murals. And we have a really gorgeous geometric mural by Ryan Janke. So currently, these are all male artists on the wall, excellent local muralists. If this mural that we are proposing gets approved, I will be the first female artist to paint on this wall, which would be a very exciting thing. Next slide, please. Our proposed site is going to be to the left of where you see this Monster Steve mural. So I've outlined it in a very bold pink color. We will not, just to clarify if anyone's wondering, we will not be painting on the sidewalk, and we will not be painting in this, there's kind of a concrete banner above the brick area there. We will not be painting above that. Next slide, please. This is a closer zoomed in shot of the wall straight on from across the street. Our wall is about 37 feet wide, 8 feet tall on the shorter end. It tapers a little bit, and 10 feet tall on the wider end. And this mural, we will be covering all of the space with art, which you will see in the next slide, and we can move to that slide, please. So the Land of Plenty idea is my bold, playful take on the abundance downtown Cleveland has to offer. The triangular shapes symbolize city life and lights and movement. The blue and the purple forms that you see in there, they emulate downtown Cleveland connectors like bridges and infrastructure. And that blue color that is in the mural design actually matches the blue color of the bridge that is above this area. And the forms in there, I created that kind of the X hexagon forms. They mimic the bridge as well. So there's kind of this direct tie to the land itself right there. Clusters of arches throughout the piece represent the arches found in Cleveland's rich historic architecture. And the organic swirly lines and bubbles represent our waves of Lake Erie. And so these bubbles and lines seamlessly merged with our hard-edged figures of the city. So this mural, though it is capped at the top and bottom, it is not constrained to an exact box. The design does flow off to the edges where I play with using the remainder of the brick wall behind with elements of the design kind of breaking off and helping create kind of that seamless look of the art comes in, the art moves out. And I will say too that the color palette I picked, I do like bright and bold colors, but I also picked colors that already match with the current murals that are on that wall to help create a cohesive flow among all the diverse art that is already on this wall. So I think this mural concept is a fun backdrop in a cool urban setting. It creates a dynamic place for selfies or portrait backgrounds for individuals and groups. Next slide, please. So our installation and maintenance timeline would go as follows. We would have the wall power washed by our wonderful downtown Cleveland ambassadors. And then in terms of application, the mural would be hand painted directly onto the facade using rollers and brushes. The paint that we will use, we've actually updated that since we sent over this slide. So the paint will be Sherwin-Williams A100 exterior latex flat paint. And a fun element that we've got included here is community engagement. So I happen to also be a city advocate with downtown Cleveland. And last year, the City Advocates program, they actually brought me in for this mural. So they did a lot of the fundraising for this project. So we're opening up, inviting some of the current city advocates and the previous city advocates to come help actually paint and install this mural with me. And we've already got there's a lot of buzz around it. People are really excited. So we're thrilled to get to bring locals in and where they can have a hand in actually beautifying the city, and they can share that and tell others, hey, I helped Cleveland thrive. Like I'm supporting, placemaking and what Cleveland's doing here, and to get to share that with their friends and family. And when the mural is finished, it will be sealed with a high quality anti-graffiti coating. We will be using Sherwin-Williams clear silicone. And finally, in terms of maintenance, downtown Cleveland will maintain the mural for us. So next slide, please. that is our presentation. Thank you so very much again for this opportunity to share this with all of you. We appreciate it, and we would love to give downtown Cleveland a beautiful, vibrant, lively mural.
Great, thank you for the presentation.
It's just the letter from ownership.
Oh, okay. We will then move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Historic Gateway and Warehouse Districts Design Review Committee reviewed this proposal at their October 4th meeting and voted to recommend approval with the encouragement to explore extending the mural into the vent area, which the applicant appears to have responded to by expanding the artwork as recommended. So,
Excellent. Landmark staff review.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Petrus.
Thank you. I am in full support of the mural. I think as downtown Cleveland has created somewhat of a master plan for the wall, I think it enhances the user experience. It's going to add some diversity to the styles of street art on the wall. It makes sense going into an industrial part of the city or historically industrial part of the city. It's not that industrial anymore. But I did also get a letter of email of quote unquote full support from Councilman Kerry McCormick, since this is in his district. And I think they've done an excellent job with taking up my recommendations, as well as the Design Review Committee's recommendations to extend the mural into the vent area that wasn't covered before.
Excellent, thank you. Landmark staff comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Har mentioned, this project is incorporated into the master plan. A few meetings ago, we saw the Monster Steve and 216 murals come through and asked for a master plan. And so that was provided by downtown Cleveland. And so they are looking at sectioning off projects in the various areas moving down the slope. And so we are happy to see this incorporation into that master plan, using these spaces for the different murals as the project kind of moves up the ridge. So one thing that we would like as staff is just for the future spaces to kind of note if the mural is going to be incorporating the venting, incorporating all of, like, covering the entire space or just covering the brick space, because that did come up at design review. But overall, in support of the project.
Excellent, thank you. We'll then open up the floor to questions and comments from the commission. Mr. Edmond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of questions. My first one is actually about the event and the boarded up opening. And it looks like you're just sort of going right over that. My impression is a lot of times when murals kind of disregard significant architectural features of the substrate, it really tends to detract and conflict with the composition of the mural. And I think in this rendering here, it looks like the vent and everything sort of disappears, but it won't. It will be very prominent. And I wonder if you considered somehow, not necessarily incorporating, but kind of working with the shape and the texture of the wall that you've got there, and how you think that's going to look with the vent and the various kind of boarded up window areas.
Great question, Mr. Edmond. So yes, we have thought this through. We have, with downtown Cleveland, and I have hashed it out many ways. We actually think this is going to be the best execution. Initially, we weren't even sure if we could paint over the vent. We had to speak with the building owner to make sure that was okay, and to paint over the other area too that is not brick, that is kind of that, I'm not quite sure. I think it's that stucco cement type material. But we did find that we can paint those things. There's a smaller vent itself that we're actually going to be able to remove and have that painted, powder coated, basically like black, and placed back in. And where I've placed the artwork, that vent will go into one of the areas that's already covered with a solid area of black. So you will see, you're correct in saying we will still see the vent that's there. It's not going to completely disappear, but the design will flow with that. And we think this is the best solution for this wall, and with given the vent and kind of restrictions around it, to paint it, and the paint will match in that, and it will also be sealed in the end with that anti-graffiti coating and that. So we're hopeful that it's all going to work together and still help enliven and brighten up this space.
Okay. A couple other quick comments. I think, when you have several large graphically bold pieces of artwork from different artists all together in one space, it can be really challenging. And so I appreciate the kind of dissolved edges that you have and the gestures you've made in terms of some of the colors matching and some of the geometry of the bridge. I think that's really evident, and I think that will help keep this from being too sort of cacophonous. And the last thing is on the substrate prep on the brick wall, power washing obviously is important. It also looks like there may be some missing mortar and perhaps some efflorescence on the wall, which you might want to see about doing some tuck pointing. And I don't know what you might be able to do about the efflorescence, but just, I would hate to see this have trouble adhering once it's in. I know you have a good primer. I don't know if you want to do a masonry sealer before the primer or not. That you might want to ask the Sherwin-Williams rep whether it's better to do that or not do that. But just to make sure that there's a really good substrate to this.
I agree 100%.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Ms. Peters, response?
Yes, thank you for your comments, Carter. I am willing to send you the original graphic of the original submission so you can see why we asked them to paint over the events or incorporate the events into the artwork. One, the color of the boarded up window and events conflict with the rest of the artwork, and the way the spaces are just boxed off, it looked a little awkward. Plus there's some unsightly graffiti on the vent as well as a rusty metal box. And so I think once you see them side by side to compare what the difference is, you'll understand the decision to go the direction that they did. So I can send that to you offline.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. I appreciate that. I mean, it's not like an objection or anything. I just wanted to, make sure that it had been considered. But yeah, I'd be interested to see that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Wong?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to express my appreciation to Downtown Cleveland for being responsive with the master plan. I do think that's going to really help us envision the future of this area. And I will say that as someone who's been thinking a lot about downtown connections to our waterfronts, that the gradation of the hill and the sort of shadows under the bridge make it really challenging of a pedestrian experience. So I really do believe that the sighting of this mural, as well as the elements, the color, will really help brighten and enliven the space and help people feel excited about making the walk. And I just appreciate the sighting and the framing using sort of the architectural elements and the bridge frames as natural frames. So thank you for being responsive to our previous comments around that and helping this have a cohesive whole. And I fully support the project as presented.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Director Wong. Excuse me. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think each of these murals being applied in this location just works to very effectively activate the space. And I always considered this area, blighted essentially. And these murals are just very effective in enlivening the space. Just got back from a trip to Scotland, and in Glasgow, I participated in a walking tour of the city, and a majority of the tour focused on highlighting the various murals throughout the city of Glasgow. And it was a wonderful tour, and how they integrated the murals effectively into all the historic structures was very impactful. And I can see a tour of Cleveland with the same theme emerging from this very successful mural campaign in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I would echo much of what our the other commission members have commented on, and that aligns with very closely with what I was about to say. Is it'd be great if we, with the master plan, start to incorporate ways that the public can really appreciate the murals and the connection to the local artist here, because I think it's something that is very interesting, and it really would allow people to connect to this area even more, beyond just the appreciation of the art, but the appreciation of the artists and their investment in the city. But overall, I support the proposal also. And sir, are you here along for this case?
I'm not. I just had a quick question, kind of going along with your last point, so highlighting the artists. If I may.
Up to your discretion. Point of order is, yeah.
Just a quick question.
And if we can allow a very brief question, if you'd like to step up to the podium, announce yourself, and then for our record.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Desmond Stanley. I just recently moved to the Flats. I walk the hill quite frequently, and I just wanted to see if there had ever been any mention of any lighting to highlight the murals, especially at nighttime. They're kind of overlooked, and just wanted to see if that had ever been a thought. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Meadows, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, absolutely. So we definitely have considered that, and it's been brought up multiple times, especially given the amount of murals and investment that's happening along this wall. And I think going forward, that's something that we'd love to see. We'll have to sort of work with the Archer ownership and sort of try to figure out the logistics and the pricing of that. But that is something that has come up before, and we'd definitely be happy to explore that more in the future.
Thank you for that response.
Madam Chair, I would like to move to approve the project as presented, with the recommendation that the new mural be integrated into the master plan that Downtown Cleveland Inc. has created. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland? Mr. Strickland? Seems to have stepped away. Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Good. You have been approved. We look forward to seeing your project move forward.
Thank you very, very
Great.
much. We're excited.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
We'll now move on to our next applicant, located at the Western Reserve Historical Society at 10825 East Boulevard, the African American Art History Walk Murals.
Hi.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before you begin your presentation.
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself from the voting because this is my place of employment, also my project. I would like to step to the audience side of the table, if I may, in case there are questions that I can help answer, if that's appropriate.
I believe that's appropriate.
Yeah, that's okay. We've had,
Okay, sure.
commission members make presentations in the past.
All right. Thank you for pausing, and welcome, and tell us about your project.
Hi, thank you so much for having us this morning. As Dr. Williams mentioned, this project is a partnership, a collaboration between Ingenuity Cleveland and Western Reserve Historical Society. Ingenuity for the last few years has been doing work with a variety of partners in the Cleveland area under the banner of Voices of Cleveland. And if we advance to the next slide, I will talk very briefly about our work to date as Voices of Cle. We've sat before this group to talk about a strategy of increasing works by artists of color and increasing recognition for artists of color in Cleveland. We've been working since 2020 to place initially temporary murals, as are shown here, and then later semi-permanent and permanent works. We'll go to the next slide. These works have used a variety of techniques, including paint as well as heat-applied vinyl to enliven spaces across downtown Cleveland. These are some works that we applied with the signage fabricator Westcamp, and that's who we'll be using for the proposed mural that we'll talk about in just a moment here. Next slide. So Westcamp has been working with us on large-scale heat-applied vinyl, and in general, to date, the works have all focused on highlighting local artists of color, and particularly Black artists, especially to celebrate Cleveland's culture, Cleveland's key historic figures, and as the project is aptly titled, Voices of Cle. So this particular work is kind of in that vein and shows to date the style and images that we have been working with through a collection or a cohort of artists. We've got about 20 to 24 Voices of Cleveland artists in kind of rotation as we go about this work. In 2021, Dr. Williams approached us about putting a work together for Western Reserve Historical Society. And if we advance to the next slide, we will see the artist who's chosen, Jerome White, who has been a Voices of Cleveland artist for the last few years. His particular style is kind of a fine art approach. He's an oil painter. He's a teacher with this City of Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights. These works are pictured in the Stephanie Tubbs Jones Gallery at Cleveland Hopkins Airport. He was chosen for his ability to emulate and reproduce faces and historical figures accurately, but with a little bit of a something different. And we'll come back to talking about him in just a little bit. But if we advance to the next slide, I think we'll see the site in question. The site is along East 108th at the corner of Magnolia, along a long concrete wall. We are choosing to represent 7 historical figures that were selected by Dr. Williams and her team from the Cleveland History Center, each of whom has a connection to Cleveland's history and especially to our artistic and cultural history as it has been developed and advanced by Black leaders. So Dr. Robert Madison, Dr. Zelma George, Julian Earls, Donald White, Dolores White, and Congressman Louis Stokes have all been chosen to be represented. In the top picture, you can see that we're approaching this through a series of 8 individual heat-applied vinyl panels. Each panel is 47 inches by 64 inches, and they line up with, we'll see in a second a close-up, but they line up with the natural divisions in that concrete wall. Notably, the wall is a bicycle and pedestrian thoroughfare, as well as a automobile-oriented street. So we really wanted to kind of create that rhythm as people are walking by, no matter what mode of transportation they're walking by on. So from a car, you'll see kind of represented large scale, each of these figures. But if you are going by as a pedestrian, and there's a ton of pedestrian traffic there, whether it is for Parade the Circle, Wade Oval Wednesdays, or just kind of the typical hustle and bustle of University Circle, we have added pedestrian scale features, including a QR code that each panel will have that will take you directly to that individual's entry as part of the Cleveland History Project, where you will find not only more historical information, additional photos, but also bits of oral storytelling as well. So it's a really beautiful entry into kind of a deeper engagement with these historical figures. I think we can go to the next slide. So in response to feedback that we received from the Magnolia 108th Commission meeting last week, we have reduced the size and scale of the additional information, branding, logos that kind of orient this project in order to let the artwork really shine through. So you can see the change from our draft layout to our current proposed layout for each of these figures. And again, we're looking at 7 total panels addressing historical figures. We do have an 8th panel that will then orient people more generally to the Cleveland History Center, its archives, as well as providing information about the project, the partnership, and the chosen artist. I believe we'll see that layout on the next slide. Yep. So in addition to celebrating these figures, we really want to highlight the artist himself, as well as including just a bit about his past style, past artworks. Right now, our preferred layout is on the right. And again, including a QR code so that this work not only becomes in and of itself visually engaging, but also really an entry into what you can find inside the History Center. And as we know, people walk around with their iPhones, so just giving people that additional ability to engage with the artwork via QR code is exciting to us. A little bit more about the overall context and the pedestrian experience, I think we'll find on the next slide. So as I mentioned before, this thoroughfare is heavily trafficked by pedestrians and cyclists. It also is really nicely bookended by existing public artworks that are pedestrian scaled and that continue again to kind of celebrate a history of Black artists and Black leaders in this area. So we have the Stephanie Tubbs Jones Memorial Garden and bronze statue on one end, and beautiful mural by Virgie Patton, Women on a Bench, on the brick wall of the Historical Society right on the other end of the proposed site. If we advance the slide, we can see a little bit more about how those 47-inch by 64-inch panels interact with the wall up close, taking up very nearly an entire concrete panel and interacting with those natural divisions in the concrete wall. This heat applied vinyl is a high gloss 3 to 5 year product that should require very little maintenance. As I mentioned, we've used it all over town, and I think many of you have also seen other murals come to fruition by the same fabricator. We are intending to replace this artwork in October 2024 after a 1-year cycle. We are already in conversations with other Voices of Cleveland artists and collaborators for the next iteration of the work. And in fact, when this work was originally proposed and Dr. Williams and Ingenuity and her collaborators had initial conversations about starting this project in 2021, we looked to work with Shooting with Our Bullets to produce their In Our DNA project here. Due to timing and scheduling, we ended up instead choosing to work with Jerome White on this first iteration, but we are tentatively slated to bring back Shooting Without Bullets. And I know many of you are familiar with Dr. Amanda King. We're looking forward to handing off the project to her for the next season. That being said, if the project for any reason is delayed by a season, or we choose to, via popular demand, leave the work up for a second season, it will remain in good condition with little maintenance required. And at the very least, we'll have this work replaced within a season or two. Again, the intention is to replace within one season and kind of create an ongoing rotation for the Western Reserve Historical Society. But we'll be protected in good shape as this project continues to come together, if we were to choose to leave the works up for some additional time. We have a timeline on our next slide. And we are working to get this project up as quickly as possible. As I mentioned before, something that we're really excited about, and for a number of reasons, it kind of lay dormant for a while. We now have the opportunity to unveil it in concert with a very exciting weekend of programming that the Historical Society has put together on October 21st. We've got a few nice days to do it that our signage fabricator is confident about. And so we are actually planning with approval to install this work next week so that it can be unveiled in keeping with the October 21st programming that the Historical Society is presenting. The only caveat to that is all of the photos that were chosen, and which you guys saw on the last slide, were chosen in collaboration with the family or the estate of the figures in question. If those figures have passed, we are still working on getting approval for our Louis Stokes photo. He was a later add. Initially, the project was going to celebrate 6 historical figures, and we've decided to go ahead and include him as well, because of course, his legacy deserves to be celebrated at the same time. We are still working on our Stokes photo and portrait, so that one image would be added potentially at a later date. Other than that, we're very excited. We've gotten some great feedback and buy into the project so far, and look forward to your comments and recommendations.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We'll then move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was seen by the Magnolia Wade Park East Boulevard Grant Allotments Design Review Committee on October 5th. And the committee did not have quorum, but the members present did discuss the project. They were supportive of the installation and did have suggestions on just firming up where exactly the murals and images would be located on the wall, which was incorporated into this presentation. But overall, they were excited about the incorporation onto this blank wall.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll move on to staff reviews. Ms.
Thank
Beatrice?
you. I'm in support of the project. That actually is my recommendation, to reduce the branding and so it wouldn't read as signage. That was my recommendation before it went to the neighborhood design review, and they did agree with that recommendation. I agree with Emily and the other partners that for the informational panel, that the one on the right I thought worked a little better. I think having the extra artwork that was on one on the left kind of crowds it a little bit. But yeah, that was my recommendation, to focus on the art so it wouldn't read as signage. I do love that they have the QR code. I love that they are celebrating historical figures in Cleveland that have made significant contributions to our city and society in general. And one thing I think that the panels are thoughtfully placed along the wall, especially considering the style of art that Jerome does. He's got several murals around the city, in Bratton Hall, Glenville, Southeast High. He's an excellent artist. He also has, murals at League Park. And I think considering the fine art portraiture style of Virgin Patton, as well as David Deming and Angela Pozzo's art on the other end, I think it bodes well with the style of art that Jerome does. So I think that the walk and the experience along that path, cohesive in that regard. So I'm in support of the project.
Excellent, thank you. We'll move on to landmark staff comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff is supportive of the proposal and recommends approval as presented.
Excellent, thank you. Then we'll open up the floor for questions and comments from the commission.
Madam
Director Wong.
Chair, thank you. I just want to say it's a great project, a wonderful celebration. We need more images of our Black leaders in Cleveland, and so I am supportive of the overall project. And I want to thank Ms. Petras for the great suggestion about the graphical reorganization, as I think it really highlights the art. And I believe the materials are appropriate with the vinyl application, and the sighting is appropriate as well. My recommendation is that since this will be a rotational experience, that if the layout remains the same, that this come back just for administrative approval through the staff, and does not need to come back to the commission. It looks like Ms. Petras has a comment on that.
Thank you for that. I forgot to mention that I think they should do that as well for future iterations. One other recommendation, if I might, with this being directly across the street from the VA hospital, I hope that in future iterations that we include some veterans as some of the imagery, so they can have some appreciation of that as well.
And in an effort to continue the conversation, I would like to make a motion to approve as presented with the recommendation, is like recommendation or condition? Recommendation that all future pieces in the similar layout come back for administrative approval for the staff, and that there's consideration for integrating veterans into the future portraiture.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second? We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
This is Carter. I actually had wanted to make a couple questions and comments that may affect the motion.
Oh, okay.
I
can retract my motion. I can retract my motion.
I mean, we could, well, just, I mean, maybe you may want to, my comment is about the didactics, and so you may just want to add something to your motion, or may choose not to, so.
Sure.
Oh, okay, I'll just go ahead.
Retract the motion that's on the table. So retract the motion.
I'm going to keep the motion on the table, and it sounds like Mr. Edmond would like to add something, so.
Yeah, I mean, just see what you think here. I do want to say this is a fantastic project, gorgeous portraits. I love the array of people selected from architecture, fine art, media, science. I'm pretty sure Robert P. Madison is a veteran, by the way, so you may want to note that. But my only, and I appreciate the rotating nature of the artwork. I kind of wish this were going to be up longer because it's so interesting. I think people will just start to hear about it and then it'll change. And it will liven the street. I also think this makes a really important statement about the Western Reserve Historical Society and who is represented there and who it's for. And I think a lot of people have what is really an outdated impression that the Western Reserve Historical Society is for rich and powerful dead white men. And so I think this is an important statement that way. So my only concern is about the didactic text and the QR codes. I think being that far away from the sidewalk, it's hard to read. I don't think people are going to walk across the grass to read it and to do the QR code. So I would recommend maybe taking that text and putting it on a little stand by the sidewalk in front of each one, or some other way that it's a little bit more accessible, because I do want people to take that further step to find out more about these people, and that might make some room for the names to be larger on the murals themselves. that's my only recommendation or suggestion. Other than that, I just think this is a fantastic project. Thank you.
I echo that, Mr. Edmond. I was going to say the same thing during the next portion of the motion. So, Director Wong, does that? Oh, sorry, Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with Mr. Edmonds' comments, and I further want to say that these are beautiful murals. I again agree with Mr. Edmonds. It'd be nice to see them up for longer than a year. I'm really pleased that there's information available about the artists. I often see murals or public art in general, whether it's historic or modern, and I'm very curious about the artists who created these pieces, and it's not often we get that information on site. So I think that's a really great move.
So I guess I will do my complete comments on is that it related to what Mr. Edmonds said, either bringing the QR codes or the smaller text forward to the adjacent to the sidewalk, or allowing, if this is something that you intend to keep up, to allow a secondary path for people to dwell on. If this is a pretty heavily circulated path, to sit there and read a body of text is going to be awkward if you have bikes and so forth going next to you. So if there's depth, what appears to be like 10 or 12 feet in the tree lawn, let's just say in front of these murals, it might be nice to have a walking path or something, that walking stones that people feel comfortable and encouraged to walk up to and engage with these murals.
May I just share 2, maybe 3 quick points of discussion. First of all, there are 3 veterans among the individuals who are named. Bob Madison is certainly a World War II veteran. Mr. Donald White, the first Black member of the Cleveland Orchestra, also a World War II veteran. And then Congressman Louis Stokes entered the Army in 1943 after he graduated Central High School.
Excellent.
So we have 3 of the 7 were veterans.
That's excellent.
Good. And then the other point is, as far as the QR code, certainly linking to the African American Archives for the Library of the Western Reserve Historical Society, and then from there to Digital Cleveland starts here. There's a lot of content that's already online. And then beyond that, 6 of the 7 individuals donated their oral histories to the History Makers Project in Chicago. So Juliana Richardson, who's the founder and director of that project and Harvard University trained attorney, didn't want to get sued, just gave me permission to link to those lengthy oral histories. In total, they're about 3 hours long, but they pull out the story so people can have a quick listen. They can also go to the website, read about a 300-word bio on each person, and listen to maybe 5-minute excerpts from their story. So it's nice because most of the people have passed away, for younger students of history to be able to hear their voices and see their faces and know why they were so passionate about the arts or public service or whatever it is that their expertise is. Also for Dr. Zelma Watson George, she donated her papers to the Historical Society. They've all been processed. It's a huge collection. Her oral history was created before the History Makers was launched, but she did that for Radcliffe, Harvard University. And so her oral history is available online as well. And we can link to that through the QR code. So people can hear her, they can see lots of pictures of her in the library. So it's nice the way that it came together after the initial feedback from the design review committee.
Excellent. Great additions. Thank you for that. Director Wong, would you like to?
A quick question. You've assembled all this wonderful history about these prominent leaders in the community. I was just wondering if there's any outreach with the Cleveland Public Schools to get this information to young people, students?
We have a lot of partnerships with the schools, and students are always on site. And there's also some virtual teaching that goes on as well through the education department, and very easily this could be integrated into those classroom lessons. One of the larger projects is GE or CLE, It's the Youth Entrepreneurship Education Program. And again, those students get free transportation to the museum, affordable admission to the museum. And again, their teachers for the education department work in the same general area that I work in. And yes, we work together in-house.
Excellent.
Madam Chair, so just responding to some of the suggestions, I do think that, having some sort of interaction from the sidewalk could be of interest. So, having, a little stand with the QR code more broadly for the contact information. I do think the idea of having a pathway in is very lovely, but I also understand that would add additional scope and would likely have, it does have to come back as a separate item. And so therefore, I'm not going to add necessarily the pathway into the motion, but just would note for the record that that ought to be a consideration for Western Reserve Historical Society in the future. But I do like the idea of integrating something from the sidewalk to help engage people as they're walking by and allow the applicant to determine what that looks like. So with that, I will make a motion to approve as presented with the consideration of adding some format at the sidewalk level to engage and to leave that to be determined between the applicant and staff members.
And then also, did you want to encourage that future images in the same locations be available? Like,
Yeah, just from a
administrative
process
improvement?
standpoint, I'd like to add to the motion that future rotations of artwork, if it's in the same format, would be able to come through to staff for administrative approval rather than a continuous commission presentation. So, thank you.
Excellent. So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. This is Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. Any further discussion?
One brief point, if I may. Dan? Okay. The reason we'd like to make the changes in October, whether it's 2024 or 2025, this is National Arts and Humanities Month. And the University Circle with botanical gardens across it is very pretty in the fall. So when people are walking, we'd like to have it, the change be made in October. Maybe earlier in October because it's starting to get chilly now, and I understand that will have some impact on how the vinyl adheres to the wall.
Right.
But October was selected for that reason.
Understand. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Musso, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
And Ms. Trett?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing the installation of your project next week.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our next applicant located at 1902 East 123rd Street, renovation and new construction. We welcome the applicant to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and please tell us about your project.
Good morning, everyone. Just checking in 20. I'm Ryan Grass with Grassroots Architecture, and I'm here with Andrew Kalnitsky from Gold Key Builders. Pardon me. So we are excited to come back to you today after going to final design review and receiving their endorsement. We thank them for that. So let me just start with what our goals were for this project and how we think we've achieved them that results in the design and the site plan that you're seeing today. So generally our goals were, let's add, and I say respectfully, a couple units to the rear of an existing property that has a building on the front. It's on East 123rd Street on the west side of the street, across the street from the cemetery. There's an existing building on the property, and we thought an appropriate number of units behind it is 2. I think we had the opportunity to go upwards of 4 based on the townhouse review, but didn't want to really just didn't want to do that from a design and density perspective. So our goal was an appropriate number of units. Let's face those units forward. So the experience visually from 123rd Street is, I think, consistent with a front house, back house configuration that you frequently see in dense neighborhoods and especially Little Italy. And then also we wanted those units, although they're considered townhouses because they're attached, our goal was that these would feel and function as homes, single family homes, if you will. So programmatically, they both have yards, they both have front porches. They're 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, and they both include 2 car garages and vehicular access from 123rd to access those. And that kind of leads to our our final point relative to goals is that we didn't want to burden Little Italy with an additional parking stress, if you will. So there's currently 2 parking spaces for the home at the front of the lot. That's a 2-unit home. That's going to be maintained as a 2-unit home. So we've got 2 parking spots for those units, 1 each. And then the new construction will have 2 car garage for each of those 2 units. So we'll have 6 parking spaces for 4 units. So generally, and I'm sorry, one final point. We wanted to activate and maintain this decorative screening that's on 123rd Street. There's currently a masonry and metal garden wall, if you will, with a little bit of landscaping behind it on the, let's call it the left face of the property. We'd like to mimic that garden wall on the right side of the property and add a little patio there. So that's our goals. So how did we get there? You start to see that in the site plan you have in front of you today. North is up in this drawing, but I'm just gonna, for ease sake of understanding, I'm just gonna start calling right and left. So right's east, west is west. I'm sorry, left is west, up is north. So on the right side of the drawing, the large yellow box is the existing building. It's a 2-story wood framed gabled street facing home that has asphalt shingle siding and asphalt roof. There's also a large 2-story deck on the south or bottom side, if you will, of that property. So our goal here on this building is to let's renovate the exterior. The asphalt shingles are in not good enough shape for us to keep. So we're gonna clad the exterior of it. The windows on the building are in great shape. The deck needs a little love, and there's a roof on the deck that needs a little love. So we will patch and repair those decks and roofs and then stain and seal those. And then that kind of aesthetic of the front building, we're going to emulate in the new construction in the rear. The overhangs, the eave sizes, roof slopes, the decks and all will start to be incorporated in the new construction. Again, so we're not after a hero building. We're after a quiet residential insertion on 123rd Street. So I just want to draw in this slide, I want to draw your attention to the bottom 3 images. Those are images of the existing building. You can see the siding and the windows and the configuration of all that. It's kind of its scale and such as it relates to the buildings around it. It's a pretty modest building compared to the buildings on either side and across the street. But we're going to pretty that up. And on the left side of the screen, you'll see kind of the outline of the site. Next slide, please. We can skip over this. These are just representative buildings in the area. I think everyone on the board here is familiar with what the context of Little Italy is like. Next slide, please. And we can jump through the next 3 or 4 slides. These are just the plans of the buildings. Full basements, living, dining, kitchen on the first floor with the 2-car garage, and upstairs is a 3 bedrooms, 2.5 or 2 baths, and then a small loft space. Next slide, please. So here's how we envision the project moving forward. Let me start at the 2 images on the right of the screen. Those are the existing building with the results of our repairs and patches and new exterior materials. We've picked 2 colors for this building because it's a pretty long building. The front mass, if you will be painted fiber cement siding, and everything else will just be kind of prettied up. And you can start to see here, if I can draw your attention to the top right picture, the bottom left of that is that small garden wall. You see, it's a masonry, 3 masonry piers with like a metal wrought iron fencing between them and some landscaping behind. We'll patch and repair that. The landscaping there's a little overgrown and dated, so we'll put new landscaping in the place of what's there now. And you'll see on the right is the new garden wall that will, with a small patio behind it, and then some additional landscaping. But otherwise in this front building, we'll do the fiber cement in the red. You'll start to see the decks, the 2-story deck that kind of envelops the entrance for those 2 units and provides outdoor activity space for them. And the balance of that building in white that you see there is vinyl siding. We'd like to switch materials once we get 40 feet back into the site. And again, you can start to see in this image, again, the top right one, I'm going to focus on that for a second. There's a gray and green structure that's beyond. That is the new construction. And I'm not sure how well you can see it in this image, maybe a little better in the bottom left corner, but you can start to see that the front porches and the front doors, really important for us for those to face forward. We want the experience of a pedestrian that's enjoying their walk through Little Italy to see that there's front doors and homes and not garages and fences. So next slide, please. This is just a slightly elevated view of the property so you can start to see things a little more clearly. The first couple were really to illustrate the pedestrian's experience as they walk by it. This is more kind of understanding the architecture. So the front mass, the red and white building, is that existing building with fiber cement siding and vinyl in white. And as your eye wanders toward the rear of the site, you'll see the 2 new townhomes with their front porches, front doors, new windows and such. And you also start to see that vehicular and pedestrian way that starts at 123rd Street. It's actually existing. It's in the existing position as it touches 123rd Street. We are widening it a bit with just functionally and logistically, it needs to be a little wider. It's 20 feet wide instead of what I think now is about 12 feet wide. And the edge of that has a 4-foot strip that's of colored and stamped concrete, just to signify a pedestrian path from the front of the site to those units in the back. And you can start to see that both of those elements, the drive and the pedestrian way, continue toward the rear units. And in the top image, you can start to see the garages between the 2 entrances. They face south, and hopefully they're as screened as we can get them. So we're pretty happy about that. And the bottom 2 images are essentially the right is the street elevation, what you'll see from the street. You'll see the existing building in the front, and you can start to see the rear units. And the bottom left image is the facade of the 2 units in the back. Based on some comments we got from Design Review and potentially the first conversations with this group, we actually simplified the gables on the front of this building a little bit to be consistent with kind of some of the surrounding context and the front unit. We had kind of a gable and a gable, and it was pointed out to us that maybe that felt a little suburban, and we agreed. So we kind of straightened up those facades, and that's what you see today in front of you. And I think there's one more slide. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a couple more slides. These are architectural elevations that start to call out the materials. On the back, I keep calling them 2 units. It's 1 building, but each one's a different color. We have on the front unit gray, and on the back unit kind of a mossy green with vinyl siding, vinyl windows, and stained and sealed wood decks with some accents on metal roofing. And the kind of front entrance is the mimic of the entrances and the decks on the front building. And next slide, please. So this attractive elevation is the north side of the new construction. We've placed the building about 3'4" away from the property line on the north. And as a result, we're kind of limited in fenestrations and windows, but rightly so, we were called to task from design review that, wow, that's a lot of wall and not a lot of windows. So we agree 100%. We're committed to investigating the allowable openings that were here on this elevation because of proximity to the property line. And we're committed to add some windows on this elevation. But do keep in mind that I think the new windows will be on the first floor. They'll be kind of up in the air. They won't be full windows because there is an existing fence that's 6 feet tall adjacent to our building that was put in by the property on the north. So lower windows on the first floor will only result in a view of a metal fence. So that's not our goal, but we do think we'll put a couple on the first floor that are kind of up on the wall, maybe above kitchen cabinets or above furniture. And on the second floor of both of these units, we'll add some because there's some bedroom and loft spaces up there. So we're committed to some windows on this elevation. Next, please. This is essentially, if you can stitch these two together, this is the south elevation that faces the drive. You can start to see those are the two garage doors that face the property to the south. We've got metal roof cladding on some dormers in the garage, but predominantly it's asphalt shingles, vinyl siding, vinyl windows, fenestration and windows in appropriate places relative to the plan. Next, please. These two drawings are essentially the same drawing. They're the front facade of the farthest rear unit. We just drew two of them because we had to understand the dormers and the configuration of spaces above the garage. But again, you can just start to see the aesthetic of the openings and the entrance and the porch. Next, please. Okay, so starting from the top, this is an elevation along the pedestrian and vehicular drive. To the right is the existing building with the new cladding, and to the left are the two new buildings. And below that are the list of colors and materials, including working from right to left, the red fiber cement, the white vinyl, the gray vinyl, and the mossy green vinyl. And just below that is the black standing seam metal roof we're proposing. And at the very bottom are those two elevations we introduced earlier with just an elevated view and some material call outs on that. And my final comment is on the site plan between the front building and the back building, we'll incorporate a fence just to separate those yards between the two, give some clarity there. There's actually a parking spot and a fence in the front yard of the first new unit. And then we'll also put a fence at the rear yard of the rear unit, just really to create and encompass those green spaces that we've provided for the residents. So that, I believe, was our last slide. And we're interested in your comments. Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Little Italy Design Review Committee on September 26th for their final review. They recommended approval with the submission of a tree preservation plan, a study of the turn radius for that garages for the rear unit, and added fenestration on the north side of the rear units, as mentioned in the presentation. They also discussed that the fire department review would still be needed due to that turn radius. They did have concern with the tightness of the lot and a suggestion to reconfigure the units in the back due to the trees, to hopefully retain some trees or have a survey. And they also discussed questioned the snow removal and garbage collection for the units on site.
Okay. Thank you for that summary. We'll move on to public comments.
We do have Mr. Marinucci here with the Little Italy Redevelopment Corporation, so I'm not sure if he has any comments he'd like to add. But we did receive a public comment to our office as well.
Mr. Marinucci, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I think the summary of the design review recommendations were very accurate. As this public comment slide does show, there was concern about the trees on the site. and the need for a study, which I think is incorporated into the process. With those comments, again, the Design Review Committee approved the project going forward with that understanding.
Thank you.
I'll add the public comments that we've received to our office, included ones that were collected by the Little Italy Block Club meeting that reflected on this project. They did note the appreciation of the design of the buildings, but they did have concern over the loss of multiple mature trees on the lot. And one of the comments did provide images as well.
All right, thank you for that summary. Landmark staff review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff feels that overall this is an appropriate proposal. We would love to see more use of hardy board instead of the vinyl on the rear portion of the property, just from a quality material standpoint. There's been a lot of discussion about the need for a tree preservation plan. Well, one is required to be submitted by ordinance. The ordinance is unclear about when that happens in the permitting process. We're moving forward with requiring tree preservation plans at the conceptual level, since that's primarily when site plans and massings are being discussed. But at this point, there's not a policy on that. So I guess given that the Little Italy Design Review Committee worked the requirement of having a tree preservation plan into the recommendation, staff feels that this should be tabled until we have that tree preservation plan, and that it's approved by Urban Forestry. Tabling it would also give the applicant the opportunity to investigate adding some windows on the north elevation, so they can share with us where those would be located if that works out.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments.
Madam Chair, I can jump in. So I do believe that in order to have a complete file on hand, that having the tree preservation plan is something that the department would like to have, required to have. And I also think that, well, this is maybe a question to the staff. At the PetBot meeting, did Fire appear at that meeting to comment?
Fire was not present. They were directed to reach out to the candidates. Yeah.
I do think that having a meeting with Fire and providing that time to have a meeting with Fire may impact the design as well. It could. It may or may not, but I just think that it would just be further due diligence to have that meeting along with the tree preservation plan. I do want to note that I agree with the recommendation for better materials. Better, more long-lasting hardy board. And I also think that, it is going to be interesting to sort of see the tree preservation plan, to consider it. I do see the mature trees in the back. I'm also mindful that, Lakeview Cemetery is across the street and provides lungs. It's quite substantial in the number of trees. So do you want to add that for consideration for the commission? But I do believe there should be a tree preservation plan. Thank you. And may I add, I'm sorry. So I support the suggestion to table until we have a complete package.
Thank you, Director Wong. Mr. Edmond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would second everything that Director Wong just said, particularly about fire access to the rear of the property. It will be important to review. I would also echo the comment about seeing the windows on the north facade. Just looking at Google Earth, it looks like most of the large trees are right in the footprint of the building. So I'm not sure how much is going to be feasible, but I do think the preservation plan is important. My one question for the applicant, and I'm sorry if you addressed this and I missed it, but are you consolidating two parcels here? And if so, where are you in that process?
It's currently one parcel. We will be dividing that into three parcels with a permanent easement at the driveway.
Okay, because on the county website, it looks like it's two parcels sort of split the long way, but that may be out of date. So just checking. Thank you. That's all my comments.
So to that point, I have a question related to Mr. Edmonds, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr.
So will these be fee simple?
Yes, they are for sale.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could take just a minute if that's okay, I don't know if, do I wait for, I don't know protocol, do I wait for all the comments and there's an opportunity for discussion, or?
It depends on the comment if it warrants a response, but hearing multiple directions, why don't you go ahead and respond?
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I just, based on our previous meetings with design review and this body, we are aware that we need a tree preservation plan and also discussions with the fire department. Just as a note of respect to the comments that are offered to us in these meetings, we've reached out to the forestry department and the city arborist a number of times, and I've also emailed all of this entire presentation to Lieutenant James. And we've been at it for a couple weeks now since the design review meeting and beyond. So I just want you to know that we're making the effort to talk to the people that we think we are not just required to, but I think it's, you know, part of the right thing to do. We're not after ignoring comments that have been put before us. I appreciate that.
Thank you for making us aware of that. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question has to do with the zoning and approval process. Are there any variances required for this project?
There's not.
No variances?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Strickland? Hearing the recommendations of 2 members and staff related to the tabling, I don't know if others are in agreement and if we should have a motion put forward to do that. But if that does move forward, I would ask staff to assist the applicant in getting those meetings set in place so that we can try to streamline this for them.
Does the applicant agree with the prospect of tabling this project?
My short answer is yes. I'm not in the business of arguing with people. That's not really my gig. But I would just respectfully propose the same thing we did to design review. The review of the fire department and a tree preservation plan are both requirements for us prior to permitting. It's part of our application for building permit requires the sign off of those 2 entities. And so what I'd like to say to you, and hopefully our actions have illustrated it, we're committed to securing strategies and requirements of the fire department and the arborist and commit to resolving those. And if they require changes, then we just have to come back here anyway. If they don't require changes, they maybe require us purchasing trees in other parts of the city, for example, or adding to a park in Little Italy, or some of the strategies. And of course, keeping the trees that we can, if that's possible, specific to the arborist. Or does the drive have to get wild? If the changes are significant, we have to come back anyway. If they're not significant, then I'd suggest if the project's not offensive, then we can move forward for permitting and secure an approval, a final approval here.
I'd like the staff to respond to that based on your recommendation.
I guess I feel that given that there is some question about the trees and that the block club and the local design review committee had those concerns. Like Ryan said, you know, the tree preservation plan may not affect the site plan at all. But I guess with the additional discussion about adding windows on the north elevation, you know, we prefer to see or have you guys see and approve the final project as final. So not kind of adding windows in afterwards. And I appreciate what Ryan's saying about having to, you know, come back if there are any substantial changes. But it seems like since the tree preservation plan has been such a discussion with this one, that having that in and evaluated before it's approved still makes sense to staff.
Okay. So I agree with at this point, we want this to be your last and final and not, continue to have you come back. And I don't think we're comfortable that this is the minor adjustments to the adjustments that may need to be made to this design are going to exceed the minor requirement that can be signed off directly with staff without coming back here. So with that, then I do agree that we should table this at this time. So Mr. Grass, do we have your permission to table this? And we can get you, if you can complete those 2 requirements, or 3, I guess, meet with fire, submit your final north elevation, and prepare a tree preservation plan and get it signed off by the arborist, then we can bring you back and have you on the agenda as early as 2 weeks if there is room on that agenda.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so we do have permission from the applicant. Would someone like to put forward a motion?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make one additional point. Staff had recommended a consideration of changing the siding material for the back buildings. And I think, given how far back they are from the street, I just wanted to make the point that personally, I think the fiber cement on the front building is sufficient. And I personally don't have a problem with the vinyl siding with the buildings in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I agree with that comment. Ms. Anderson?
I agree with that comment as well.
We would always love to see more, long-lasting materials, but we appreciate that you've gone it beyond just the initial 10 feet that most people do. So,
So with that, Madam Chair, I will yield on the materials, but I do want to make a motion to table until the tree preservation plan has been submitted to staff, as well as
the final north elevation.
Yes.
And meeting with fire?
Yes. So adding in, secondly, having the elevation windows added, and then the discussion with fire initially as well. My final comment on that is, we don't want to enter into the rinse and repeat cycle, and having all those elements all at the same time with one final review and approval will just be helpful to the applicant.
So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
This is Dale. I'll second.
Bob Strickland.
We have a dual second, but Mr. Dryer, you won it by the skin of your teeth. So Mr. Dryer has seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Wilson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dryer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
So please reach out and contact staff offline, and they can help you make sure those meetings get arranged.
Yeah, I can help facilitate.
I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next applicant, located at 1117 East 105th Street, the masonry restoration of the Corey United Methodist Church. We welcome the applicant to unmute your mic, and announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Good morning. This is Steve Jennings with LDA Architects. I believe we also have some other project team members on the call as well. Margaret Land from Cleveland Restoration Society, Greg Frost, and Pastor Kendrick from Corey Church, and I believe someone also from Kuhn Restoration. So we're very excited to be part of this important project for the city of Cleveland. This is an important building, and our goal here is to really preserve the historic character and really bring it back to what it was, repairing some damage just mostly due to the age of the building. There are really three main areas of concern. On the image here, the front main facade, the column to the right of the portico there was previously hit by a vehicle and caused significant damage. So the replacement of material at that column is one item. The second item is the monumental stairs, also at the entrance there. And the third item cannot be seen in this image, but the south elevation, the cornice work is severely deteriorated. So if we continue on, we can go into more detail for those. And then I guess the fourth item would be just throughout the rest of the facade, there is, general maintenance of, tuck pointing, other terracotta repair, but all, what would be considered more of a maintenance. So on the top image, that's the south elevation. So you can kind of see there's the keynotes there. Kind of number 1 and 5 are that cornice line. This is, as I mentioned, severely deteriorated across this entire elevation. So we are proposing a fiberglass replacement for this cornice work. And that's primarily due to the existing terracotta pieces. If we were to replace in kind with terracotta, is very minimally supported by steel that gets tied back into the building. It'd be really difficult condition to replicate. This is also up, pretty high from the street. So based on other projects similar to this, we feel that the viewing distance is appropriate for the fiberglass material. On the bottom elevation, the west, which is also the main street elevation and primary entrance, you can see the keynote number 2 is the column on the right there that is significantly damaged. In this case, we do not feel that the fiberglass would be an appropriate solution. So we are proposing a GFRC product here that we think can more accurately replicate that terracotta and be more durable and long lasting for the application. Since it is, as you can see, closer to the grade level. And then you can, behind the car in the image, there is the monumental steps. I think we have some closer images of that in the additional slides. Go to the next slide. So both of these elevations, as I said, are relatively minimal kind of maintenance, tuck pointing. Everything is being done per national park standards. There is a National Park System grant associated with the project. So they are also reviewing the proposed work as well. Next slide. So in these photos, you can start to see some of the significant damage. The one on the left has the column damage. So, at the bottom, obviously there's more damage where it was specifically hit by the vehicle, but then the cracks continue all the way up to the top of it. On the kind of middle and right section, or top right, you can see that south cornice. The kind of one right in the middle of the page is that kind of existing steel support. And then you can kind of see at the top right, it's the kind of corner that's been removed. The bottom right photo is the stairs. Really, the support for the stairs has just kind of crumbled. Used to be a, masonry, just bricks laid kind of between the granite treads of the steps. So that's just over time due to water, really just become. You can see it's almost just not existent anymore. I think we have some additional photos of that. The next slide. Yeah, so you can see there's very little remnants left of kind of these brick walls that were supporting the front steps. So all of those steps have been removed and retained so that we can rebuild those walls and then return the original steps back to their original location. Sorry, if you go back to that last slide, one more thing. So you can see also on the left, bottom left is just the cleaning. Yes, that was a mock-up for the. I think that addresses everything. If you want to go to the next slide.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, I believe that addresses everything.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to landmark staff review.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was no design review committee review of this since it's not within the district, and it's being funded by the National Park Service, so their oversight is generally pretty thorough. So just like you say, staff is delighted to see the restoration work being proposed for such an important and significant building. We're a little curious about the front steps being demoed before we saw this, but the work being proposed does appear to be in keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standards. So between that and the oversight from the National Park Service based on their funding, we're confident to recommend approval as presented.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments.
Madam Chair, may I begin? I think jumping in a lot today. I do want to say thank you for your care in such a significant landmark in the city of Cleveland. This is one of the only places where both Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X spoke, and the congregation today continues to meet, and we just think this is a really important piece of Glenville's history and the city's history. So just happy to see this move forward and appreciate the work.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wong. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment that in my career, I've been involved with several restoration projects similar to this, and using fiberglass cornice as a replacement for the original terracotta is pretty typical and very effective in terms of being able to replicate the details of the original terracotta cornice in the fiberglass material. So I'd be supportive of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I echo your comments. I think the restoration is very sensitive. The choice of materials is appropriate based on where the materials are and the durability needed. And I'm in full support of this project. Other questions and comments from the commission members? Not seeing any. Would someone like to put forward a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll put forward a motion to approve as presented.
Excellent. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I second the motion.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Hey, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Right, Mr. Edmond?
Yes.
Director Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Well, good luck with your project.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll now move on to concept plan reviews. We'll begin with the first applicant located at 3300 Clinton Avenue, ADU addition garage expansion. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Unmute your mic, announce yourself, and please tell us about your project.
Good morning. This is Jason Bristol. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning.
I am the homeowner speaking on our behalf this morning. It's nice to meet all of you. I believe we're here for concept review of an ADU and garage expansion that we are proposing in our backyard in Ohio City. This is I think our second sort of conceptual review. The plan for this is to put an apartment on top of the existing garage. When we built the house in 2013, 14, it was built with that in mind. It was just something we couldn't do at the time. And it is intended to be literally for my husband and mother-in-law suite, because it is intended for my mother to live there. She's 78, so the top of it is about a 1,400 square foot apartment. And below that, connecting into our yard will be a recreational room that is intended to service in-ground swimming pool that we are planning to put in the backyard. It was designed by David Ellison, who was our architect on our home. And our home is federal style, Cleveland federal style in particular. And this structure is also neoclassical in style, drawing from, you'll see some Greek revival elements and also elements that sort of mimic the north elevation of our home.
Just a little protocol. If you'd like your slides advanced, please let us know and we can advance them for you.
Yes, that'd be great if you want. I guess we can talk about the slides that are up right now. It shows the garage and the apartment above it. You'll notice one notable thing. The garage door is currently now on the east elevation of our garage. Those would be switching to the north. And the cars would pull in off of Wheat Court, which is an alley that runs behind our property. This is actually more in keeping with how the garages around us are set up. They used to be carriage houses in this part of Cleveland. And so this would be actually more harmonious with the existing structures along Wheat Court. Many of the new builds also have the garage door back coming off of the court as opposed to where we have it now on 33rd Street. And then you can see the basic layout for the apartment. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, so these elevations show you that in the upper left corner, you'll see that's what we would see from our backyard. That is the Greek revival element I was referencing, and that would be the pool would terminate into that room with that element. There is a standing seam metal roof on this structure that would be black. We currently have a black standing seam metal roof on our side porch on our existing home. And this also gives you a better idea of what the garage, that north elevation would look like for the cars to enter the garage. The windows, you also see there the east elevations and the windows depicted on the structure there. It's clad in hardy board. Our existing house is hardy board and brick. It would be the same color and the same size hardy board as what we already have on the house. I want to go to the next slide. This came out of our first concept review. It was asked that we have a rendering done to show sort of what the public would see from the 33rd Street, the public right of way. So if you were driving north on 33rd Street, on the left of the picture, you see part of our living room wall, the existing wooden privacy fence. There's a row of horn beams that also add to privacy. And this is what you would see looking into the yard from 33rd Street. Let's go to the next slide. Again, there's that rear elevation. I believe during our first conceptual review, they also did request a rendering of what it would look like now. From this is Wheat Court that I was referring to in the beginning of my remarks. You see the garage door, as you see to the west, a service door for a staircase to the apartment and egress. And then the door on the eastern part of the structure is for utilities for the swimming pool that I referenced. I can go to the next slide. I should mention the windows are aluminum. They're wood windows that are clad in aluminum. They're Pella Architect series. They're black. Those are the windows that we have on the front of the house. And the windows would match the existing house. And this photo here also shows you the other garages along Wheat Court, how they access the court for garage access. Go to the next slide. And this is the rendering of what the backyard would look like completed. In the middle, you see an existing stone terrace, and we have a colonnade. There are trellises for fruit trees, and really on the right-hand side of this picture where you see the the pool and again, the entrance to the recreational room. This is what you would see from out the back doors of our house in our yard. And if we could go one more slide, I think that's it. So that's sort of the overview. And I'm happy to take any questions or comments or any concerns from the commission.
Thank you for the presentation. We will start with feedback from the Design Review Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Ohio City Design Review Committee on October 5th conceptually, so no action was taken. The committee discussed the roof line options and questioned flat roof versus the roof presented, as well as the possibility of one of the windows on West 33rd may be impacted by code as it's 3 feet off the street, which was just a question that was posed. Overall, the committee noted that it's in keeping with the design of the main house and generally favorable.
Excellent, thank you. Staff comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this project still needs to go to the PEPBOT community or the PEPBOT committee. I believe they're scheduled, and the PEPBOT committee should help sort of, I guess, identify any other issues or alleviate some of the concerns that were raised by the local design review committee. As the property owner mentioned, moving the garage to the alley for alley access is preferable than to having it on the side street. So that's appreciated. But design and appropriate wise, given that so much of this is sort of inward facing and in the backyard behind a fence, staff has no objections to the concept.
Okay, thank you. We'll then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who would like to start us off? Ms. Anderson?
Okay. I think the design is lovely and appropriate. It's good to see that the garage access is off of the alley instead of the side street there. And I'm fully supportive of this design. I think it's a really refreshingly beautiful concept, and pleased to see it. I look forward to seeing it in actuality.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission?
Madam Chair, wanted to note from a planning perspective that we fully support accessory dwelling units known as ADUs, as this is a great way to add appropriate medium density and also support things like aging in place and other important factors. Not saying anything about the applicant, but just like in general, we support ADUs. That is a joke. That we support ADUs and accessory dwelling units largely. So, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Wong. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a beautiful design and complements the existing house very well, and looking forward to seeing this addition along Wheat Court.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I echo much of what has been said. I think it's based on where it's located and its minimalistic, impact on the public way. The majority of the program facing inward. I'm in support of the design. Any additional questions or comments from commission? Not seeing any. Since this is a concept plan review, there will not be a vote. Does the applicant feel like you received enough feedback from the commission to continue the development of your design?
I do. I appreciate all of the positive feedback. And as we told the local design review and everyone else, we think we're close to final with this design, but to the extent the changes, obviously we'd come back, but we don't envision any, and we would like to now proceed with getting the builder involved in other things, and we'll be back to you again. And I appreciated all your help and positive comments this morning.
Well, thank you. We look forward to seeing you return with your final design.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our next applicant, located at 2828 Clinton Avenue, new construction and demolition. Before the applicant begins, I'm going to recuse myself based on being presented from my firm. And
Do you want Mr. Strickland?
Mr. Strickland, could you please lead the meeting while I step away?
Okay. Well, the applicant would introduce themselves and tell us about your project.
Up here, wherever you're comfortable. There you go. There's a little lag, so there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning. My name is Denver Broker, principal with Vocon. I'm here representing the development team, our client, TurnDev. We're very excited to present to you 2828 Clinton, a new multifamily residential development in the historic neighborhood of Ohio City. Here we go. First image. We'll get right into it. We've been working on this site for, just a little bit of background context, for probably 3 or 4 years through at least three different development teams and compositions of the project. Over that period of time, we've become very familiar with the intricacies of what we see as a very transitional site. One that is next to tall buildings, one that's next to single family homes, one that's integrated with retail components. And we think what we proposed here really balances all those attributes to the neighborhood and its immediate context. So the site, north edge of the site is Church Avenue, south edge of the site is Clinton Avenue, east is 28, west is 29. The blue dashed line represents the boundaries of the property currently occupied by former Vibrator site, a company called Vibrator. Saucy Brew Works has been using it for some storage. The intention, this is a two-part proposal. One, request to demolish the building and two, to construct a new development. The northwest corner is existing firehouse structure, currently coffee shop and some other uses. And then at the southeast corner, we have Banana Blossom restaurant, Malachi House, a hospice service. Few images of the immediate context in the upper left. We're looking on Clinton to the east, and the middle, we're looking on Clinton to the west, and then bottom, on 28, looking at the site of Banana Blossom Restaurant, Church and State, in the background to the north of our site. A few other additional images of the context. Upper left, upper right, an existing historic structure that has been converted to residential. Middle, we see the very contemporary Church and State and new retail pavilions, or huts as some people call them, there at the corner of Church and 28. At the bottom, we see Church and State. Now, point out in particular, note the space between the higher and lower parts of Church and State. That's an existing pedestrian walkway that our project has purposely been planned to connect to and extend. A little closer up, just in terms of the existing conditions, immediate context. The existing building on the site, a few images here, and our team has toured with landmarks through this. So you've been in this building previously. It's in moderate to poor condition, depending on what parts of the building you're in. So the context, we're in a part of Ohio City Historic District. It's made up of a number of things, a number of building types. So we have both new and historically referential multifamily projects like the Dexter. We have new multifamily projects like Church and State that present a more contemporary presence within the same historic district. We also have a number of buildings that have been adaptively reused for various things and restored. And then there are some buildings that have been built new, similar to the last style. As we looked at that, to follow that into account, here are some images of those buildings. We're seeing residential buildings, both new and historic, next to single-family homes. So they've coexisted in this historic district, much as what we're proposing with our project. Some additional images, adaptive use projects in the bottom right, new construction, upper right, older buildings, upper left, lower left. This project is in a local retail district. It has an allowable height of 60 feet and up to 90 feet with additional setbacks. We believe that our project falls within the zoning guidelines for height and setbacks. Three key design principles that shaped our work on the site and the project. One, knit the project into the neighborhood. Two, integrate the material palette with the neighborhood texture. And three, focus on the pedestrian experience. This is an aerial axonometric view of the project just to get everyone oriented. We have adopted names for these two buildings. It is one project. They are interconnected at the basement, first floors, and with a second floor terrace. But from a pedestrian experience, they will appear as two independent buildings, and they will also have independent architectural character as a reflection of some of the immediate context. The northern building, we've dubbed the Hanover House as a nod to the name of West 28th Street historically. And the building to the southwest, we've dubbed Clinton House after Clinton Avenue. Hanover House is 6 stories, Clinton House is 5 stories. There are a total of 212, just as a way of program, there's 212 apartments in the development and a proposed 223 parking spaces. Lower level is parking. The lower level is accessed off of a ramp off of Clinton. You can see it there in the bottom right side of the drawing next to the Malachi House. We have chronically working on this for a while. We've purposely set the basement walls back from the property line significantly. Did a number of things for us. One, it saved shoring costs. We would need it if we built out to the property lines. And two, it kept us enough separated from the two adjoining buildings that also have basements to not run into underpinning and other issues disturbing the foundations. First floor. Point to the kind of blue-green area at the top middle. That's the lobby, main entrance to the entire development. It is immediately opposite the pedestrian pathway between the two sides of Church and State that I pointed out earlier. We'll see that in renderings later in the presentation. Around the perimeter of this first floor parking are all residential units. So on Church, a part of 28th, 29th, and Clinton, there'll be a residential focused pedestrian activity. Each of those units will have their own front door on the street small stoops for each. So in a way, they're kind of like townhouse entrances around the development. Vehicular access and service has been located in 2 spots as discreetly as possible. On West 28th Street, there's an entrance to the parking area. Immediately next to it is an entrance for move-in and for garbage pickup. And the second similar situation is on Clinton Avenue, just to the west of Malachi House. I will point out that the space between this development and Malachi House, most of that, Malachi House with a very tight setback, is part of this site. The development team is working with people at Malachi House and are proposing to provide that land to develop a small outdoor space for Malachi House, exclusively for them. And we'll show you some images of the idea of what that could be. Second floor, this is where we start with the double loaded corridors, the purple representing amenity spaces for the apartment community with fitness, community room, and multi-purpose space. These units at this level open up to a second floor deck with a pool, outdoor grill stations, lounge spaces, fire pits, all the amenities that residents would expect from a community like this. Then as we move up through the building, the floors are fairly regular. We'll note that as we move up in Clinton House, that the building starts to set back. And we'll see how the setbacks play to the immediate context there. And going up the 6th floor of Hanover House, there is a significant setback along the north and east sides of the building that also play into how they relate to context. Just a little bit of zoning related data. Again, 212 units, 223 parking spaces. We're showing all of the setbacks at the perimeter and from the adjoining sites. We'll note that around the perimeter, we've provided at least a 5-foot setback from the property line. It's the intention of using that space with small stoops at around 4 units and a landscape buffer between the public sidewalk and the faces of the first floor. You see that in the renderings. We think it's an effective way to set up a public, semi-public, and private space with that kind of transition. These are simply elevation drawings. We'll get into the renderings that are a little bit more descriptive, but these are to help describe the heights of the building and where the setbacks occur for the zoning. Quickly go through these. Talk a little bit about the design concept. These are images from the immediate neighborhood. You see it's a very diverse, colorful, highly textured neighborhood. Many things going on. Very artful, very historic, very contemporary. It's all of those. What we've done is looked at each of the buildings and developed a complementary but distinct palette between Clinton House, which you see a snippet on the left, and Hanover House, which you see on the right. We get into this, you'll note that Clinton House takes on a more traditional flavor with modern elements. It takes on a kind of townhouse character. It has more brick. It's relating more immediately to what happens with the single-family homes west of the site. Whereas Hanover House takes a more contemporary approach. It's taller, it's a little bolder, but still soft. And again, taking its cues a little bit from Church and State in terms of the power of that building, not wanting to compete with it, but making its own quiet statement. First image, we're between the two sides of Church and State, looking south toward the entry to the new development. You'll see that we've entrance pushed this front porch up into the second floor, made a marker to the entrance, and also opened up the space of the porch, the space between the building and the firehouse. As we walk through these plans, you'll note that the space around the firehouse is intended to be developed with landscape as an amenity to the apartment. There's been some discussion about it being an amenity to the community. That's still in flux with the developer in terms of security and safety and other things. Oops, too fast. A little closer. So here you can see how the porch and the space between the building and the firehouse start to expand the notion of open space here at the corner. And then as you look to the east, the building ripples along the facade, along the street, the upper floors. The light colored material that you see is brick. The slate blue gray color is a metal panel, a standing seam, the exact product we're still working on. As we move a little along further east on Church, you can see these ground floor stoops for the ground floor units. And here along this street, they're coupled with balconies at the second floor, adding to this kind of pedestrian scale along the base of this building. As you also can see as you walk along here, the sixth floor disappears from the view. It really feels like a 5-story building. And moving back, we're looking west on Church and State to the right, Hanover House to the left. You see that synthetic wood material, again, picked up here on the corner. You see that again on other corners of the building, similar to how we handled it at the entrance. Our building at 6 stories is slightly shorter than the 6-story wing of Church and State, simply because Church and State has a first floor retail floor that's much higher. We don't have that at the base of our building. And a little closer into the corner ground floor unit, and then another unit along 28th there to the left, and way beyond the entrance to the parking garage. This is on 28th, looking north. In the foreground are brick mass is an enclosure around existing equipment associated with the Malachi House. The more textured mass is an enclosure around transformer generator for this new development, so kind of co-locating equipment. And then you see the entrance to the active rate parking. Shift, here we are at Clinton and 29th. This is Clinton House. As we noted when we went through the floor plans, this building has a number of setbacks. Here at the corner, you can see immediately that there's a 3-story brick volume, a significant setback with a roof terrace to the 4th and 5th floors. Along the lengths of the building, there's a vertical modulation of the building that arcs back to townhomes, and then a setback at the 5th floor with roof terraces at that level. And then you see in the distance to the left, the building volumes drop down to 3 stories again, with a setback flying to the firehouse. Again, very carefully woven with its immediate context. This is Clinton looking west. This is the entrance to the lower level parking, and then the service door for move-in and trash immediately to the left of that. To the right, we see the beginnings of the garden space separating this development from Malachi House. Then moving on to 29th, next to the firehouse, and a glimpse of the green space between the 2 buildings and how that could be a lively addition to the neighborhood. And again, how the setbacks relate to the immediate context. A little closer where you can start to see public sidewalk, tree lawn, and then the landscape buffer between the public sidewalk and the fronts of these ground floor units. Each of the units are a little bit different as you move around the building. There's certain things that happen next to the firehouse or on the corner, or the ones in between. There's a little bit of variety, all staying within this palette of materials. And this is on Clinton, the corner unit. I will note that the intention with the development is to rebuild all of the sidewalks around the entire perimeter at their current widths, with the current width of tree lawns, and probably, if the trees don't survive, we're obviously going to put new street trees in. So we're going to maintain the pedestrian flavor and simply add to it. This is a conceptual view of the space dedicated to Malachi House residents and staff doing the new development. We're looking east. I think this may be the last couple of images. This is a view that most people won't see from the street. We're up at the second floor, amenities terrace. The thing I will point out again is what we've done by separating these buildings. The northwest corner opens up. Someone on the deck sees the top of the firehouse and beyond. You look the other way, you see to the southeast. They continue a tradition in Ohio City of found views. Things are always shifting and changing depending on where you are. And then I think this is the last view. This is looking to the northeast of the terrace side of Hanover House. All right, there's a lot there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, so Denver, that concludes your presentation?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to Ohio City Design Review and any public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe Nate Lowell from Ohio City is here. I'll let him start us off.
Thank you. Good morning, Landmarks Commission. Thank you for allowing us to give comment on this development today. I just wanted to quickly talk through where we're at with community engagement on this project. So we did have a chance to meet with the architects on September 20th, and our understanding is that the architects did meet with the local block club in late September. However, as part of our community engagement plan, which OCI has worked on collaboratively with resident groups for the past few years, we do ask that all residential developments of 5 units or more go through a more robust community engagement process to ensure the larger community is informed. This engagement involves a community-wide meeting held at Urban Community School once a month that is live streamed and recorded for those who cannot make the meeting. And we also ask that these projects go on CoUrbanize, which is a community engagement tool that we use to gather community feedback and input on these projects, as well as allowing the larger Ohio City community or anybody who's interested to learn about these projects. So we would ask that the development team commit to attending our community meeting, as well as work with us to publish a CoUrbanize page before this project returns for any final reviews. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lowe. And would the applicant like to respond to that request from Ohio City?
Yes, we've had that discussion, and with the development team, we have put together the submission that we would like to be up on the CoUrbanize page, and we're committed to going to the meeting. And I believe the meeting is, we don't know. Is it Tuesday, Wednesday, or canceled, depending on what I look at?
If I could respond, it is next Tuesday, the 17th. So we can chat offline if you guys are willing to attend that. Thank you.
Yes.
And the applicant will be prepared to present at that meeting next Tuesday?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to staff review and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This project was reviewed conceptually by the Ohio City Design Review Committee on October 5th. It was concept, so there was no action taken. They discussed the massing and materials with appropriateness versus not appropriateness, reducing the feeling of height at the pedestrian level, as well as the focus on the pedestrian scale at the Clinton Avenue corner, and the impact and connection to the firehouse and Malachi House. there's a lot of discussion on materials like brick color windows, and that kind of public versus private impact with the kind of area by the firehouse. Overall, they were interested in seeing it moving forward and just looking at contextually. But yeah, overall, liked the design elements provided.
All right, thank you very much. And so we'll move on to the staff, Landmark staff comments.
Yes, so I will continue with that. This project should be looked at by PEPOT, which we will be scheduling for that, which is that internal city review. And there is, because this is a demolition and new construction, there is a bit of history on the existing building, as it's the 2020 address is located on the footprint of the Third Baptist Church. So a little bit of background for that. One interesting fact I found in researching is that the address of 2020 Clinton was not used for most of its history. In most newspaper articles and paper, it was just the corner of 29th and Clinton. That's just how it was addressed, which made it fun to research. So this church was first, the congregation was first organized in 1852-53, kind of that winter, as the First Baptist Church, Ohio City. It changed its name to the Third Baptist Church with the merge of Ohio City and Cleveland in 1854. The church itself, physical building, had its cornerstone laid September 24th, 1855, and was a brick church with Gothic windows and doors, with masons and a carpenter listed. The construction was completed in 1866. They were able to celebrate their 25th anniversary in the building on December 13th, 1877. Although there were extensive improvements made in 1889, overall the church was standing and in use at that time. It was merged, the congregation was merged in 1900 with the Olivet Baptist Church at Bridge and Dare, or West 52nd Street. And the church building on Clinton and State at the time was noted as being in disrepair, as the Olivet Church was new and modern, because it was dedicated in 1871. So the church property was then conveyed to the Cleveland Baptist City Mission to be sold, with the proceeds for that sale going to the Baptist Mission on the west side. After 1900, it was purchased by the Randall Mattress Company, which has its own interesting history in that area. That company was started in 1886 by Mr. W.D. Randall and expanded as an exclusive mattress manufacturer and one of the largest in the U.S. at the time. Originally they were located at 201-205 Superior Viaduct. Now the viaduct plant was destroyed in a fire, while the interior was destroyed in a fire in March 14, 1902, and they purchased the property on Clinton a month later. The same building caught fire again in 1904 and was completely damaged and gutted again. Still standing though, which is kind of interesting. So our property at 2020 Clinton, when it was purchased by the Randall Mattress Factory, they immediately started construction on creating that into a new plant. That plant included the purchase of the neighboring properties, purchased the lot itself and the building for $5,000, purchased adjoining lots for about $8,000 at that time, and started construction. The 3 stories of the church's 3rd story or roof level was converted into more storage. And during the construction, they were removing the steeple from the church, and it actually fell during that removal process. They had a worker climb up the tower, which was about 120 feet, got to about 20 feet from the top, 25 feet from the top, sawed it off, and then tried to pull the top down. While they pulled the top of the steeple down, the bottom fell as well in a different direction, which took down power lines or wires across Clinton, and the falling lines further down Clinton hit a wagon and almost hit a worker who was cleaning the streets. So no injuries beyond that one person who was hit, but otherwise that was just a large amount of construction that, as you can see in the Sanborn map, expanded that church footprint quite a bit into a variety of different buildings at different levels, 3 stories, 2 stories, and 1 story. Now, it was purchased in the 20s by the Buckeye Paper Company and then later the Sobel Corrugated and Wooden Box Company. They introduced their own additions, made changes to the property to incorporate their uses as cardboard and boxes. And they expanded even further into other adjoining lots. That particular company had a fire in November 27th, 1941. Possibly started in one of the frame buildings that were adjoining the church property. That went up pretty quickly, as you might imagine, in a cardboard box factory, which the image shows it completely on fire. And it damaged the buildings heavily. People in the adjoining properties all had to evacuate, and the owner of the company saw it burning and thought, wow, that's a cool fire, and then went to rescue his papers. So they eventually moved to East 55th, which is actually in our Broadway Historic District. And the building itself was purchased or moved into by the Cleveland Vibrator Company, which previous to moving to 2020 Clinton was at 2108 Superior Viaduct. And they moved to the Clinton address in the early 1950s. The layout had changed greatly from when it was the mattress factory and box company to the Vibrator Company, as in all the upper levels of the building had been removed, and so it was just one story across the board. And they used that remaining area, although the buttresses from the original church along West 29th were still present and visible. The Cleveland Vibrator Company expanded out of their 2020 Clinton location very recently. They moved to Old Brooklyn at 4544 Hinkley Industrial Parkway in 2019. And what's interesting is you can kind of still see the footprint of the original buildings that they purchased from the sky view of the white roof kind of follows that a little bit. And you can see all the different additions and improvements and expansions that were made to that building while Cleveland Vibrator was running it. Context-wise, so outside of the history of that building, neighborhood context, that area and that entire block between Church and Clinton and West 28th and 29th has been anchored at the corners with public or commercial uses and residential in between. It's located within the Ohio City neighborhood, and it's not in the main thoroughfares, but a block or so off of the main thoroughfares of Detroit and 25th that have the larger construction buildings. Outside of Detroit and 25th, most of the buildings in this neighborhood are residential homes that are around 2 stories. There are larger buildings that are more interior. Most of those top out at about 4.5 stories. You can see pictured the top left corner is the building that was on the location of Franklin, where the Dexter is located now. So you can see it's about 4.5, 5 stories in that location. Currently, the area around the subject property is residential 1 or 2 story homes and buildings. A variety of different styles and types, but mostly 1 or 2 stories. The new construction along Church is considered fronting on Detroit, so it's really a Detroit property, which is appropriate to have that higher scale, those larger scale buildings. Site visit wise, it was completed in January of this year. We had a few of our commission members present and some of the Ohio City Design Review Committee members present, and the building had been empty for a while. The first level of the church is you can still see kind of the buttressing left on the outside, but otherwise it's been changed and changed again from all the different uses. It was briefly used by Saucy Brewworks and the site as like an outdoor eating area called the Vibe Garden during COVID. And inside the building, it's a mixture of brick construction and CMU, and a lot or any significant elements that were remaining from the church or even the different factories could be covered, but aren't very visible or seen and just lost over the variety of construction over the past 150 years. It's a very interesting building with a very wide and varied history. Staff-wise, we're not against development of the block and feel like design should reference residential construction and possibly include double hung windows or other elements, not necessarily church and state, but other elements throughout the neighborhood. And we would like to see a tree preservation plan submitted as well as a salvage plan as the project moves along.
All right, does that conclude staff comments?
Yes, it does.
All right, thank you very much, Jessica. With that, I'll open it up to the commission for their comments.
May I just start by saying I think it's a really interesting project, but something caught my attention early on when you mentioned Malachi House and hospice. I think in the same sentence. So can you just share a little bit more about how you've been working collaboratively with Malachi House to come up with an enclosure that would suit both your development and the needs of the residents there?
And we haven't been in those conversations directly. Our development team has, and they very much want to be a good neighbor. And there were a couple of things that they currently don't have. Their back entrance doesn't have, to get to the first floor, there's not an accessible entrance. So opening up this space gives the opportunity to add a ramp along the west side of their property, and so it becomes accessible. They don't currently have any kind of viable outdoor space because the property lines are so tight. We're obviously proposing a development that is larger than that building. So we wanted to appropriately set back and then utilize the setback in a way that benefited them. And so our development team was very conscientious about those conversations leading up to where we are today.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Dan, since I'm remote, I obviously can't tell what commission members might want to provide comment. So can you help me out if there's somebody in the room that wants to comment on the project?
Of course, of course. At this point, it looks like Ms. Anderson has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Musson. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. I like all the brick. I like that the project has a little bit of a step back from the street. I was curious about the color. Looks like a stone.
We're exploring the brick color, and we have a kind of a framework of ideas about where the brick should go. One, we want it to be a warm color. Two, we believe that it needs to be slightly irregular, not too tumbled, but irregular, not a super crisp brick you'd expect on a more clinical or commercial building. So something that is referential to historic. Right now we're showing a light colored brick on Hanover House and a more buff, tan, warm beige color on Clinton House. Some members of the Ohio City Design Review thought that maybe it ought to be the same color brick on both buildings. Some people think that maybe it ought to be red on Clinton House. We did look at darker colored brick, and what we found is that if we went with a darker, more traditional red brick on that building, it made it heavy, kind of ponderous. And whereas the lighter brick kind of lightened it up, made it a little fresher. And so directionally, that's what we would like to do. We don't have the specific brick yet.
Thank you on that. Couple other things. I'm really happy that it's a warmer color brick, and I'm fine with the lighter color. I'm kind of concerned about the overall massing and the 6-story height. I appreciate that you are stepping back, which minimizes that vertical. But I think the overall massing would be more appropriate on Lake Detroit as opposed to in the residential area. That's something I'm comfortable with. And the section that faces West 28, I want to see more brick there. And again, the massing is not in keeping with the residential footprint in that area. It just seems too monolithic. It's my take there. And again, I probably want to see more brick. This looks like kind of a dark blue or metal cladding. I think it's a little cold. So, I mean, there's a lot of things I like about this, but I'm uncomfortable with that scale and that particular interpretation. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Anyone else? Commission members in the room that would like to comment on the project?
Mr. Chair, this is Director Huang. I do want to say that I think there are very thoughtful elements to the design and how you approached it. Appreciated pulling the basement back, for example, and your study also of the different character around the neighborhood, as it seems like every side is a little bit different. And that's fine. It's like a cool, funky area. And so some of the things I did appreciate is that you added walk-ups on the fronts of Church and West 28th, I believe, West 29th, I believe it is. And I think that street level interaction is really helpful and helps it feel neighborhoody. You have sort of front porches tucked in to the West 29th Street area with no curb cuts, which is also great, with all the retail there. The nearby retail hosts a lot of sort of family-friendly events and things like that. I do think that you paid attention to the roof lines of the fire station. So I did notice you kind of matched the height of that and then stepped back the taller parts of the building. I don't think the height is unprecedented in that there is the interior Franklin Circle Dexter building. And I would also say that, it's very close to Detroit and West 25th Street. So the massing to me is appropriate. My only comment on design, actually one more point to add is that it does fit the zoning of the area, as you mentioned. So it does fit the limited retail with the heights there. My one design comment is that on this view in particular, and the Church Avenue side, it does feel monolithic. I think someone else referenced that. And so if there's an ability to kind of break up that, the blue, similar to what you do on the West 29th side, I think there could be a nice rhythm there, but that's my only design review comment.
And we did address that some in the Ohio City Design Review.
Okay.
And some of the discussion centered around the rippled facade kind of disappears in that dark color. So one of the thoughts we have is maybe there's some way through a detail where you really highlight the difference in the planes, so then you feel that modulation along the length of the buildings. I think there's the next level of development. We can, through details, accentuate that ripple more.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll add my comments now. I think that I really commend the design team and the developer for developing essentially two unique designs for each of the primary structures. I think each one of them complements the adjacent properties extremely well. And given that West 28th Street has really developed as a substantial northwest corridor, I think the migration of the higher density, higher roof lines to the south from Detroit is appropriate, given the way the whole neighborhood has developed over the recent years. And I agree with the comments about particularly this elevation where maybe the rippling, the undulations in the facade might be a little lost. And I think it would be appropriate to develop some kind of differentiation to somehow accentuate or accent that unique facade and its rippled effect. All right, so that concludes my comments. Seeing no other comments, does the architect, the design team, the development team feel like you had sufficient input in order to advance your design?
We do. I mean, with this group and the previous group, there have been some within this group that feel that the massing is appropriate, some that would like to see a smaller footprint or fewer floors. I just have to speak on behalf of the development team. It was a long process to get here in terms of balancing what was right on the site, what made sense at a pro forma level. We're really, this is the sweet spot for this project for architecturally, we believe, and for the developer in terms of making it work. And as someone noted, the Dexter is immediately behind us, and it's actually taller than our structure.
All right, thank you very much, and we look forward to you working with the community facilitated through Ohio City Incorporated.
All right, thank you.
For community engagement, and we look forward to advancing your project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, Director Vaughn, I have to depart for a meeting.
All right, thank you, Director. And with that, I will turn it back over to Julie for presentation of the last project.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Strickland. We'll move on to our last applicant, located at 2429 West Superior Viaduct, the Bridgeworks project. New construction and demolition. Is the applicant present?
I am.
All right. Obviously, your mic is unmuted. Please announce yourself and tell us about your project.
This is Brandon Klein with Geist Companies. We have been brought to the table for this project to move it in a newer direction than what was previously received approval from this board. And we are coming to the group for concept review of that new scheme. The project team remains the same outside of that from a development perspective from MPIN's Eco Development and Grammar Properties. If you want to go to the next slide, Carl. Project's located in kind of the heart of Ohio City at a pretty important corner of West 25th and Detroit. You want to go next slide. A little bit more zoomed in version, but it basically runs along the side of the Detroit Superior Bridge and then Superior Viaduct as well. Next slide. So some historic photos of the project and of the site. Again, it's directly adjacent to the Superior Viaduct Bridge. There was a former 5-story building on the property from the history of it. There's a significant aspect to the underbridge of the Detroit Superior Bridge, which had a streetcar system underneath there that we'd like to open up access and obviously connect towards Irishtown Bend's new park and green space. Additionally, there's a pretty significant ticket booth that used to be that's at the corner of this site as well that we would be maintaining, and then the close proximity to the church adjacent on the other side of Superior Viaduct. Next slide. So some context for today. Across the street is the quarter phase 1. Also catty corner to this is the Forest City Savings and Trust building. And some of the detailing of that building, we'd like to create kind of an inverse and pay homage to that detailing. And I'll get into that a little bit on the new construction. But then obviously the significance of the Superior Viaduct and the church directly adjacent to. Next slide. Again, some more photos of the current site conditions, heavily overgrown, poor asphalt, concrete, a lot of vegetation growing through sidewalks, et cetera. But there are two structures that have some significance. One is the former Cuyahoga County Public Works facility that has a very heavy Art Deco design to it, and then also, as I said, the ticket booth on that corner. Next slide. So the site itself has some unique conditions and restraints in regards to easements and vacated streets and some utilities that run through. The Superior Viaduct was actually kind of rerouted and vacated. Used to originally slice through the diagonal of the site through the main portion thereof. And then obviously Vermont Avenue that kind of blends into that. I believe that there's a hope to rename that Vermont Avenue to either the Viaduct or Superior Viaduct on that. And then the adjacency and proximity to the Detroit Avenue Bridge. There's a significant grade change between the bridge elevation and the site's elevation. While it is kind of adjacent to, it's not really truly a frontage because of it would slice at about the second floor, second and a half floor of the building at that condition. Additionally, there's some ODOT easements and utility easements that run along the property's edges that we're respecting. And then there's a sanitary easement that runs north and south. Basically, if you look at this plan, directly between the building and the parking lot. Next slide. So some ideas, some concepts on the open space and inspiration. This project will have a very heavy, large plaza that will be holding the corner of Superior or of Detroit and West 25th. That plaza will be tiered as you kind of cascade down into and towards the building because of the significant grade change that kind of occurs along the viaduct itself. So some imagery and concepts of how we would soften edges and create that public activated space, allowing for the retail to kind of pour out of those storefronts and truly activate and create this courtyard at that corner of West 25th and Detroit. Next slide. Additionally, there's some building elements that will be integrated into the project that we're still working towards, but some concept imagery of what we're looking at. There's a fair amount of different roof plateaus that occur at lower elevations as we go from a commercial program and parking garage to the residential form of the building. And there's a lot of heavy emphasis about softening the edges of those plateaus and beautifying them with some landscape edging, which I'll show on the plan shortly, but trees and planters and or some ornamental grasses along the edge to give kind of a softer look. Additionally, large roof terrace that overlooks the Cleveland skyline and a structure, and then the ability to kind of have indoor-outdoor space on that roof terrace as well. Next slide. So we get into the ground floor plans and site plan and layout of the project. As mentioned, we are maintaining the existing ticket booth on the site. The front corner at Detroit and West 25th would have a fairly large open plaza to be able to allow public to enjoy and interact and integrate within that retail section. There's just under 10,000 square feet of retail holding the corner of Superior Viaduct and West 25th. And that we're still working through the final designs, obviously, of that courtyard, but the idea would be that it would be kind of a tiered step. Currently, we show a very heavily sloped walkway down towards. The idea was that it would be, and comments from design review were, trying to make it a little bit more cascading and open and less hard to basically walk through and circulate amongst that. But basically, there's a kind of a diagonal gesture that would slice through the building and allow a pedestrian to kind of walk through the access off of this plaza and go through the main lobby and connect to the viaduct as well. There's The project consists of the same program that was previously approved in the 16-story tower. It's 145 apartment units, 132 hotel keys, and then mixed use with a restaurant, retail, parking, and other ancillary services associated to it. This site does have the urban form overlay on it. We've had some pretty heavy dialogue with staff in regards to that because it's currently mapped on the Detroit Avenue side for frontage. The challenge obviously there is that Detroit Avenue is sloped and basically elevated until about where it says property area. The word area is when it becomes about to be street level. So we've had some dialogue with staff about basically from the back of the ticket booth forward, we would be treating that a part of the urban form overlay, and the garage, as you'll see in some of these renderings in the future here, how they're it would be an elevated plane. Additionally, comments while I'm on the site plan from design review that we're going to work towards was really trying to ensure that we create a pedestrian experience around the kind of southern edge of the building as you connect to the underbridge, and so it doesn't feel so much like just a sidewalk and alley. One of the items that we'll emphasize a little bit better in section as we come some of these lines, the underbridge structure and wall is actually about 30 feet off of the face of the garage wall. However, there's a kind of a cantilevered sidewalk that comes and kind of creates almost a canopy as you walk underneath there. So there is a lot more room underneath this walkway than what it looks like in an aerial 2D plan, which we'll be emphasizing. And additionally, we're going to take a look at an idea of trying to activate the cross connection and easement zone through the underbridge to the right of the lobby area where there's that hashed underpass to create more of a multi use area as far as allowing for slow vehicular traffic, bike traffic, and pedestrian traffic. We're looking at a case study similar to what was done in Dumbo down on the Manhattan Bridge in New York, creating kind of a unique activation sign and kind of Instagram moment to kind of be the gateway and entrance into the underbridge and then Irishtown Bend here at this moment so that you can cross connect through that to that viaduct. So those are some elements that we're kind of working for and working towards as we come back forward to final things that we're working for. Next slide goes, I think, to the second floor, which would all be parking, screen parking. Next slide gets into the more typical floors, 3rd through 6th floor. The hotel would be on the forward wing section of the floor plan, represented in the aqua and light blue. The yellow, whites, and areas that's more of a U shape would be the apartment building stacked. And here's where you can start to see, the forms shift back from kind of the commercial footprint with the parking and lobby area and some of the roof plateaus that get created. What you can see in the green are those landscaped edges that we're talking about, softening the edge of those roof terraces to create kind of a nice greenscape from the street level, and then also give a little bit more of a landscaped view, if you will, outside these windows. You're not just looking at a large new roof condition on these lower roofs. Next slide. And lastly, in the floor plans, there'll be a rooftop terrace, some apartment amenity space, and then a rooftop restaurant open to the public as well. Next slide. So from an architectural inspiration and the imagery, we're looking at a lot of masonry with some soft metal accents that would represent a little bit more of a kind of a coppa patina. I think it's actually Parisian patina would be the color of that green, that soft green as an accent panel. We're looking at a lot of texture on this building. You can see in the middle imagery of kind of utilizing an old material of masonry to kind of represent and be respective to the historic district, but utilizing it in a little bit more of a modern contemporary way. So this kind of stacked corbelling that kind of occurs to create some texture on the columns. The window trim detailing of utilizing that stacked and vertical brick detailing and expression. And then the perforated panel, we're going to be utilizing it in a kind of a gradient fashion. So at the car level, it'll be at most opaque with those very minimal meshed perforations, to as it goes up in the floor level, it would be lighter and more airy with a larger hole, so that it gives a gradient effect and screening to the parking garage area, along with some insets of the green accent. And then idea of instead of a step back, utilizing the green patina metal to create kind of an illusion of kind of a more modern twist on the mansard roof, but in a flat fashion for that 7th floor. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the material palette, you can see here from the description, and you can see the first image of the rendering at this corner, of that area. And we'll get into some of the detailing and discussions. And then the arched windows on the 7th floor are intended to kind of bring in and pull in some of the representation and detailing of the Detroit Superior Bridge, as well with the arches as well. Next slide. There's that same rendering, but you can kind of look down into the plaza and entryway. And you can start to see some of those landscaped edges and the intermediate roof terraces and the gradient detailing of the parking garage as well. Next slide. Here's a look down at the plaza itself and the ticket booth that would be remained. In that, comments and feedback and direction moving forward here, instead of having this kind of harsh linear sloped walkway down to the entrance, there was a lot of discussion of trying to allow for a lot more free movement north and south, and not prevent people from really utilizing and occupying this plaza at a lot of different plateaus and levels. So we'll be looking at that. Next slide. So here's another view of that from the street, looking down at that entryway. Next slide. Here's a great shot of the detailing on the building to give you an idea of how we're treating some of the masonry conditions. So at the outside corners, that's where we get that stacked corbel detailing and look, and then the Rolock soldier coursed expression at the floor line, and detail and trim around each window set. Additionally, you can kind of see how we're treating the cornice to this building as to be a little bit subtle, but have this kind of sloped condition and angled condition of the same material, just to have a little bit underemphasized crown and top, instead of creating kind of a separate color and kind of trying to minimize the appearance of a headband, if you will, that would occur on a cornice work. And then obviously you can see the arched windows and some of the detailing as well. Next slide. Here's a step back towards down the street of West 25th. And again, the detailing of some of that masonry and brick, you see some of those details in the Forest City Savings and Trust building, but it's actually an inverse. They actually have a reveal instead of an expression. So that's kind of the idea that we wanted to kind of mimic and pay homage to the detailing of that beautiful building across the street from the quarter, but do it in a little bit more new modern way, to be respectful, but also create our own. Next slide. View of the church in the foreground, and down Superior Viaduct. Again, one of the items that we're dealing with, we pulled back the facade to align with the setback of the church. Again, trying to not steal the frontage and the view and the street view of the church. So our facades are aligned instead of pulling it forward. With the urban form overlay, we are supposed to engage the street within 8 feet maximum setback. We will be going for a variance for that, again, to respect the church and not foreshadow that. Additionally, I think that the building coming down to 7 stories from 16 fits much more contextually in with this area of the district and neighborhood. Next slide. So a view coming down from Detroit Superior Bridge down past the building. One of the comments that was brought up at design review here was to try to create a little bit more breakup along the facade, the long facade along Detroit, to maybe add another break point because it is a long facade and area to create some relief. So we're exploring those options as well. Next slide. Here's a view, a streetscape view going down towards Superior Viaduct and the main entrance to the hotel and lobby, the porte cochere. Next slide. I have some aerial views. If Carly, you just want to kind of flip through, these are just some at different four corners of the building, showcasing different views. The roof terrace you can see in the entrance and porte cochere. While these are going through, happy to answer any questions from the commission. And then lastly, I'm sorry, the landscape plan preliminarily, but heavily landscaped, trying to really activate and create a nice lush green space. And then items that we're really going to emphasize as we move forward, as I mentioned, is the connection to that underbridge and how we activate and create a unique space and condition along that walkway so it doesn't just feel like you're walking alongside a building.
Thank you for the presentation. We will move on to Design Review Committee feedback.
Madam Chair, it looks like Nate Lull is here from Ohio City, Inc. I don't know if we want to take his feedback from the community before design review or.
Sure. Mr. Lull, would you like to tell us about the community feedback?
Good afternoon, everybody. Nate Lull with Ohio City, Inc. Quickly, just wanted to run through the community engagement process around this. This project has, as you know, has been seen in various iterations, I believe going back to late 2020. There was a Corbinize page started for this project in January of 2021. And as the project has gone through its various iterations, these updates have been posted to Corbinize accordingly, so that the neighborhood could share their feedback with the developer or their questions or comments. Generally, we've seen excitement and positive feedback for Bridgeworks in its previous iterations. And we have not received any new comments or questions on the Corbinize page since this project update was posted 2 weeks ago. One thing to note is that this did go through our community engagement process, but technically speaking, this is in Flats Forward service area. It touches Ohio City, but technically is the neighboring CDC's service area. I don't know if Jim is here, if he could speak to, that doesn't look like he is, but I just wanted to point that out just for clarity. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lull. We'll then move on to Design Review Committee recommendations.
All right.
It's all right. It's getting long, Jessica. We got it. Go ahead.
Carl. Thank you, Madam Chair. This went before the Ohio City Design Review Committee at their October 5th meeting. There were a lot of comments about, I guess, just sort of the massing. I think everybody, the understanding it's gone from 16 to 7 stories, so it fits in better with the context of the neighborhood. But it creates a larger footprint. So the Design Review Committee thought that it'd be nice if there's a way to break up the elevations a bit, make it feel less monolithic. There was also comments about more attention being paid to the procession to the Detroit Superior Bridge lower level entrance, and also addressing the Irish Town Bend Park, that the building created kind of too much of a wall between, I guess, on that east elevation there facing what will be the park. Comments that the elevations needed more relief. And I guess an overall feeling that the 7th floor, the green color didn't quite work. The sort of irregular patterning of the arched windows didn't quite work. Some people didn't really like the arched windows in general, but I think, you know, they do tie into the bridges there, so it makes some sense. Basically, that, you know, the top of the building, you know, the committee felt needed some more work. And then just sort of the relief of the elevations to break them up a bit.
Thank you. Move on to landmarks staff review.
Staff largely agrees with the Ohio City Design Review Committee comments. We also wanted to ensure that, well, access to the lower level of the Detroit Superior Bridge would be maintained through an agreement with the county. We want to make sure that access is welcoming and inviting for visitors and not feeling like walking down a back alley or just a sidewalk behind the building or through a parking garage to access it. Scale-wise, we feel that the massing is more appropriate than the previous iteration, but we agree with the Design Review Committee that it should be broken up a bit. We also feel that the green element on the top of the building should either lean more into being a mansard roof with dormers or be topped with some sort of cornice. The project is scheduled to meet with PetBot. The project team is scheduled to meet with PetBot in the next few weeks. And I think the feedback from that committee, you know, will help guide this to move forward. There may be some issues related to fire access, sidewalks, that sort of thing that affect the site plan. We're also interested to see the salvage and reuse opportunities that come along with the demolition of the old county garage building, which was previously approved under the old version of this project. So.
All right, thank you for that summary. We'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just my initial reaction to this presentation is extreme disappointment. I personally, it's documented from prior meetings that I did not have a problem with the 16-story concept. And I thought that it did have sufficient linkage to downtown on the other side of the Detroit Superior Bridge so that it was justified at that height. But, you know, there was much more glazing in the prior iterations. And I have a real problem with the 7th story of this building. I don't like the design at all. And I don't think just because the bridge features arches that it's appropriate to mimic that at the 7th story height for this building. So again, extremely disappointed. I think the design's got a long way to go to come close to the significance of the design of the original proposal. So I can't support this the way it's proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other commission members? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not support the 16-story tower, and I am much more open to embracing this design. I like the brick. I think it's more in keeping with the character of the area. I'm fine with the arched windows, but I do agree with staff's comments that a cornice or more of a dormer kind of treatment would be an improvement. I also support the comment that the facade, especially on the Detroit facing elevation, needs to be broken up a little bit. It's a little monolithic. I'm happy they're keeping the ticket booth. My really overarching large concern here is the gray brick. I don't think gray brick is appropriate for the area. I think there's way too much gray brick in general. And that is something that presents a great concern.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I will make my comments next. I do appreciate the change in height, because similar to Ms. Anderson, I was probably one of the people that did oppose the previous height, although I did truly love the design that you previously had, just not appropriate for this location. So I do like, that you've addressed the height and you brought it down to the scale of the neighborhood better. I do like the plaza engaging the street along West 25th, and I guess slightly Detroit, but mostly West 25th Street, and how you're trying to create that public space. I do like that your approach and concept of the balance of the modern and historical materials and details. But similar to what the design review stated, I am not in support of the 7th floor mansard roof. I feel that you're mixing too many languages along in such a large building also. I did appreciate the more glassy approach to the top of the building of the previous rendition. So I would encourage you, as Mr. Strickland said, is to incorporate more glass, especially in that 7th floor, if not 6th and 7th floor. I would agree with the comments that right now it feels far too monolithic of an application of your detailing. And I think with the size of this building, you truly do need to break it up and change the detailing and or the planes of the building, to balance that. If there was more ins and outs so that the Detroit elevation was not so long too, in your Z configuration, or I don't even know how to describe it exactly. The area near the bridge, especially in your rendering, feels very flat and very long, with very minimal differences in the detailing. If you could expand the detailing or change the materiality or change the plane, I think that would make this a much more successful project. And then finally, the public access to the underside of the bridge is something that I think really needs to be taken care of and celebrated, and make it known that it really is open to the public. Just quickly looking up your reference project, the Dumbo project, it appears that there's more visibility to that public access. So, if you were able to change the scale or bring it down or allow access and create a portal to that entry point, I think then people would really embrace this in the neighborhood and everything that is going here. But I wanted to, I appreciate the care of this site, because it is such an important site, and just the surrounding projects like Irish Town Bend, working with them to make sure your development is hand in hand coordinated with what's going there, because I think this is going to be one of the most impactful corners of the city for the next, decade, based on, what is going on just south of you. Those are my comments. Other questions or comments from the commission? Not seeing any. Does the applicant feel like you've received enough feedback from the commission and the design review committee to continue the development of your project?
Yeah, we do, and appreciate the feedback and discussion here. The unfortunate realities of the world and economics today. The 16-story tower just was not, it was a little too ambitious, and unfortunately needed to get rethought, reimagined. But there's elements to that could be integrated and further refined. We already have started working on some of that work in advance to hearing comments from Landmark, just from feedback we've received from design review, as I tried to kind of mention some of those key attributes during the presentation. So definitely enough feedback. We'll definitely be back and hopefully respond appropriately to comments and elements. But this project's going to be a 7-story building, so that is the future. That is what this is. But we will do a better job of being a little bit more respective of some of the detailing to enhance it.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you return with the development of your project.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That concludes our concept design portion of our agenda. We'll move on to meeting minutes. We have 3 meeting minutes that have been circulated for approval. Does anyone have any questions or comments? If not, would someone like to put a motion forward for approval?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from April 9th, 2015, May 14, 2015, and August 27th, 2012.
Excellent. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Madam Chair.
Second.
All right. Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musselman, please call roll.
All right. Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Let's see. Still, Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trott?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
All right. So that we'll move on to administrative reports.
Yeah, some of you may have noticed we're down at Carl today. Mr. Bringes is attending the Heritage Ohio Conference in Dayton for, I guess, the better half of this week. So we're looking forward to hearing what he has learned when he returns. Also wanted to thank Chairwoman Trott for joining me at the City Council operational budget hearings earlier this week. It was a lot of fun. We'd like to thank City Council for the opportunity to fill them in on all that the Landmarks Commission has been up to in 2023.
Well, I appreciate all the background and the legwork that you did for that meeting. So thank you. Made my appearance very easy. All right. Well, then I think, and Jessica, good job covering the history. I think you gave Carl a run for his money. Yeah. So I think that's all we have for today. So we're going to adjourn our meeting and we'll see everyone back in 2 weeks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.